Warning before we start, during this episode, each of the podcast team will have a different way to pronounce Delaque. Please grab your designated Imperial stress ball and try and make it through the podcast. Happy New Year, Underhive scumbags, to episode 14 of Chronicles from the Underhive, a Necromunda and Post Apocalyptic podcast. I'm Tom.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Tony.
And today it's time to crack open our new rulebooks, see what's changed, and watch in for the shadows as we try and uncover the Delaque. And like we've said, there was a warning at the start. We will all say Delaque differently, so let's all try and get through it. Okay?
I'm not saying Delaque. I'm
No.
not doing it. I'm not doing it.
I know that Tony's one was slightly different to mine, but we'll be all right. we get through our differences. Okay, before we jump in, as usual, come join us on the Facebook group, Necromunda Tom on Instagram. And again, thank you for those people who have given positive reviews on iTunes or commented on other podcast apps. It helps other people hunt for the group, so thank you. And then, again, if you ever did want to buy anything on Redbubble, I know I need to buy a new thermos for my new job. So, for when I find a new job, should I say. So I'm going to get myself a Chronicles mug and just start as a nerd as soon as I get through the door. But yeah, so that's available too. And the link is on every time we post up the podcast on the Facebook group. So no more waffling. We're going to start with what we've been up to. Okay, guys, we're at what we've been up to. I actually forgot to ask who wants to go first. Does anyone want to volunteer?
I'll go if you like.
Sweet.
Just
Michael.
do something a bit different. Right, so Christmas for me was just spent with family and friends. We decided this year not to do any presents and stuff, basically because we're just a bit skint at the moment with various things we've got to pay for. And to be honest, it didn't feel any less Christmassy because we did that. So I may try and squeeze that one out for another year. The other thing that happened is just before Christmas, it was literally like the Saturday before, there was a bang on the door at 8:30 in the evening, and being a grumpy old man, who the hell was this? Went down and there's a delivery man carrying a big box that I had to sign for. So it completely slipped my mind. It turned out to be the Resident Evil 2 Kickstarter that turned up. So, although I might have paid for that whenever it was in February or earlier this year, it sort of meant that I did actually have a present to open on Christmas Day. So that was quite nice.
A present for yourself.
It was, yeah, very selfish. I did feel guilty. But,
until you opened the box.
Yeah, but it was pretty good. I was quite pleased with what I'd managed to purchase from that. So I shall be playing some games of that soon.
Are they models transferable?
Yeah, kind of. They're a little bit small, like they're not quite 28mm sort of scale. But there's different things that can be used, swapping but in both directions really. There's a big crocodile type creature. There's a couple of sort of monsters and creatures that you could throw into Necromunda quite easily. I just need to have a proper look at the models and get some of the stuff painted. Put it on my painting pile. What do we do? Trying to think. I played some Age of Sigmar, which isn't appropriate to the podcast, so we won't dwell on that. I played some more Age of Sigmar, so I won't dwell on that either. And surprise, I haven't played any Necromunda, but I'm going to blame that on Tom because he's scheduling the podcast recording the day before I get to play. So it's all Tom's fault that I haven't played Necromunda.
Sorry.
So
what is it you're going to be playing tomorrow?
I shall be playing my Genestealer cult. I'm not sure what gang I'm up against, but it'll be something or other, and I shall post a load of pictures and whatever on the Facebook group, just to prove that I actually did play a game.
You're just going to set some models up.
Yeah, then stand by a table taking photographs. Yeah, damn it, rumbled. You saw through my cunning play. That's pretty much me, really. I've been just hiding under that rock.
Okay, fair enough. Tony, do you want to go next, or shall I?
Yeah, no, I'll go next.
Sweet.
I've basically been busy spending the new year building and painting orcs.
What is with everyone?
Well, so I've had an orc army for a long time, but I've been making more efforts, like in this new year, to actually try and complete projects a bit more. So I've been putting some serious sort of time in. The aim is to do a little bit of hobby time every day.
Okay.
Like 10 minutes is fine, 2 hours is great, whatever. Just a little bit every day. And to hold myself accountable to this, I've actually been tweeting what I've been working on every day over on Twitter, so I actually have to post something.
You might have to be our Twitter correspondent on for Chronicles and Underhive, because I don't do Twitter. It's the only one I don't do.
Well, if anyone does want to come find me over on Twitter, I'm over there at Count Hillary Gaming. And at the moment, it's mostly work in progress pictures of me working on various looted orc vehicles or painting some orc boys. There's a tweet every day at some point.
And and the little one's allowing you to get away with doing some work?
Just about. So that's why I can allow myself to do just 10 minutes, if that's all it takes. If that's all I can get in as one day, 10 minutes, quick hobbying. I think one day all I did was put some combi weapons on my Meganobs that I'd converted up. It took me about 10 minutes to do. Snap a quick pic, put it up. There you go. Look, that's I think like day 7 or something. I've been very optimistic because all my tweets, they're all numbered. So like today's is going to be 12 of 365.
Wowzers.
So I'm going to see how long I can continue that hobby streak for. Like I'm working on today's batch right now, so I'm just painting a little bit more on my first set of orc boys.
That's a noble challenge, that's for sure.
Yeah, and see if you can talk and paint at the same time.
Yeah. One thing though that I have been doing is I've been converting up some orc trucks looted from the Imperial Taurox. It's like the vehicle that the Imperial Scions, the Scions use. And that is a better orc truck than the orc truck kit. It really is. It is the orkiest vehicle I've ever seen the Imperium have.
You've been scraping off all the eagles and things.
Oh yeah, and then covering it in lots of orc clan glyphs and so on.
Nice.
Orcifying the weapons. But having done that with that kit, I also really want to make it into some sort of Necromunda piece as well, because I think it would be the perfect kind of Underhive caravan vehicle.
Nice.
Like just sort of making what I'm doing right now a sort of like ramshackle flatbed truck, but without having like the orc clan stuff on it, and instead it's just this very like ramshackly, Necromunda vehicle.
Loader.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
I think they'd be brilliant on some 3D boards, or even used in like the caravan scenario.
Yeah, caravan scenario would be sweet. I'd have to try and steal it from you.
Mm-hmm.
Or use some Delaque and just sneak by. You wouldn't even notice it.
One of the things that I want to really do in the caravan scenario is use like some harpoon weapons like the Orlok gang have, and like drag the caravan back. Like really just put it to where you want it to be.
Oh, that sounds really cool.
But
You can use you can use Michael's crane.
Just pick it up.
Yeah.
Got a magnet clamp on the top.
Have the caravan trying to get from A to B, but if you could drag it to C, then you could grab it by your crane and run off with it.
Awesome. Be like a Fast and the Furious film. All of a sudden a tank will come in, and then Vin Diesel will drop like 52 floors and then just dust himself off and go somewhere else. And
Be ramping it onto the back of a Thunderhawk.
or from a Thunderhawk into something else.
We need to get this truck to the top of the spire. What should we do? Drop it on the spire.
Oh, those films are getting sillier and sillier. Okay, we're at the rambling bit, so it's my turn. Okay, so I've just finished my Goliath Zerker, thank God. I enjoyed painting it, but it was just so much model. He was so big, it was like painting a vehicle. Like, I forget how much paint there was. Like, I spent like 2 days just painting the shadows on the guy's front of his muscles. Like this is going to take like 4 weeks to paint.
For
It was
these
so long.
reasons, I use washes.
Oh man, it got to the point where I could not get his right shoulder correct. However I painted it, I just couldn't get it because basically I was using scale 75 paints and I was trying a different way to paint skin than I normally do, which was just like essentially two different colors, then washing it and then highlighting it. I wanted to do gradual colors and gradual glazes and stuff like that. But I wish I'd have started on like a small model as a test subject and not this giant dreadnought-sized beast that I had to use.
It looks
But
really good though.
oh man, well the shoulder I got to the point where I got so bored of trying to get it right that I just glued two orc shoulder pads together and just made one giant shoulder pad that covered up the shoulder because I just couldn't bear painting it anymore. So that's why he's got that giant shoulder piece, which I'm happy with, but it was a necessity to save my sanity to get that done. But he is done, and I've taken some photos with him and the rest of the group. And now, apart from someone in the group saying that it would have been a good idea, which is a good idea, for me to use a squig as a sump croc, I want to use one of the new goblin squigs as a sump croc. That's going to be the last thing on that Goliath gang now. So everything's done apart from a pet, and then that's that whole gang sorted. And then that'll be completely done. Brutes, pets, all of that stuff. And then the Escher, I'm just going to paint my Chaos, the Chaos Fleshhound that came with the Chaos characters, and that's going to be my the brute version. Is it the fur cat or the Chimerics? No, it's the Chimerics one. I want it to be, or however that's pronounced. Because it's going to be like the genetically modified thing. So I'm going to green stuff some fur and stuff, I think, just to make it so it's not just reptilian, that it will have other bits in it too. But that's hopefully what I'll probably plan to do next time. But yeah, essentially it was just finally getting that Zerker completed and taking some photos of those guys, which can be seen on the Chronicles group if you want to go onto it. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. So if that's all we've been up to, we can go on to confirmed news. Okay guys, welcome back to confirmed news. I've only got a couple of things that I've noticed, and well, obviously the rule book and everything else have come out, but we're talking about that today, so I won't obviously talk about that now. But we've seen new heads for the 5 current gangs, so there's new head swaps and they all look awesome. And obviously the deluxe ones haven't come out yet because they've only just bought the gang out.
They do look amazing to all those new heads, and I am looking forward to getting some for like all my various gaggers. But I have to say, this just, for me, helps validate my hopes that we will get a similar kit for Bionics for the gangs in the
future. You do want those arm swaps, don't you? Oh, and this is why super glue is more superior to plastic glue, because if you've made all your gangs with very similar heads, if you've got a bit of super glue, you can pop that head back off again. But if you've caned it full of plastic glue and shoved it into the shoulders, you're going to have trouble popping that head back out. So that's why I always use super glue, and I just wanted to stir up a bee's nest because I know some people think the opposite.
Yeah.
I do have plastic glue.
I'm not going to go for the I'm not going for the head swaps. I like some of the heads are actually quite nice, but the way that my painting is, it's just not really of much value to me personally, because I'm not going to be picking out the details and stuff. I'm going to be getting a bit of flesh colour on where there's a bit of flesh. There'll be some sort of random hair colour, whether it's on a beard or on their head, and that's just the ladies. And then I'll be throwing a wash over it. So to me, it doesn't matter so much whether I've got duplicates of the same head, as long as the leader type characters or the champions or something are different to the regular Joes, then I'm sort of happy with that. But like I say, it's nice that they've got them for people that do want to go that extra mile, isn't it?
Definitely, and I think I noticed on each of the sprues, there's kind of like one or two which would be kind of your more obvious leader and champion models that have really big detail, like some of the, like the Cawdor one or the Escher one, where you can see that's probably the leader, and then the rest are for your Gribblies.
Yeah, there's the Escher one that basically looks like the bounty hunter almost, isn't there? With like the really big like headdress of hair, which clearly is meant to be sort of like a leader or champion type.
And I think it just means that where people have made gangs where they've wanted one of every gun type and all of that sort of stuff, where you've got 20 models, and in 20 models the 5 different heads you can have just look a bit samey after a while, it does really help that. Really break it up. So I think that's really cool. And then the other thing I've seen is the Ambots, the 2 Ambots that appear to be coming out in plastic, which will be awesome.
Yeah, they look nice.
Yeah, they look awesome.
Because as I know, I've just dealt with a giant bloody model that was made of metal. I definitely want plastic. So I'm glad that they've done plastic. It means that I can find that I can drill into them and start damaging them, and it just gives me a lot more control, I feel. But they're going to be used for a lot of things. They look really cool.
Yeah, they have so much conversion potential, and even just so much like paint scheme potential.
And just the amount of space that I can do the chipping on, and I can drill in some bullet damage, and I can use my airbrush and start spraying on some heat damage and stuff. They're really cool.
Feel like some of those models which you almost want to find an excuse to get them, because they are just so nice.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get them. I mean, I'm very unlikely to have a gang at any point that's got so big that it'll have an Ambot, but I want the Ambot. I just want them both. And even if one of them joins my Inquisitor warband or whatever, I'm going to get 2 Ambots. Depending on the price, obviously. I don't know how much they are.
Yeah, I'll have to wait and see. I'll certainly want a couple.
They do look really cool. Are there any other things that's caught anyone's eye?
The only other thing I was thinking of was, obviously because I've got my Age of Sigmar eye on, the Goblin release they've got at the moment. There's plenty of creatures and Gribblies and stuff within that army that might be of use to people to have as creatures of the sump and things like that. You've got all squigs and other strange little creatures. So the bit sellers, they might be selling stuff.
Well.
Yeah, and then you've got full-on squigs of all sizes, like from sort of, hand-sized squigs all the way up to giant monstrous ones. But also they've got like the new trolls, whatever the Troggoths, I think they've called them, and they could be converted for some of your big guys and monsters within the Underhive as well. So there's potential in there, I think.
If we wanted to do a Muty gang.
Yeah, I think that's somewhere on the cards. So there's plenty of Gribblies and plenty of monsters.
Yeah, in a similar vein, I think the new Gene Stealer cult models that have been revealed look like they could use for a whole range of Necromunda conversions.
Like the bikers and stuff.
Even just like the new characters, like the Magus and stuff, and the like assassin and so on, they look like they could make some brilliant hired guns and bounty hunters, or like conversions for chaos cults and stuff.
Is the assassin the one pulling with 3 guns with 3 arms?
No, that's
like
just
from
the
their holsters.
Okay. That's even a different one. There's an assassin one that's like he's more human than Gene Stealer, but he's got like a cloak and a like turreted blade and all the rest of it, and he's like leaping,
yeah.
like
I remember now.
But like, that looks like it'd make a brilliant like hired gun or bounty hunter style assassin.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can pull over. It's like the Imperial stuff, the genes, anything kind of human-y but not space marine-y.
Yeah, basically, like, I think the Gene Stealer range really is one of the best ranges for Necromunda conversions.
That's what my Vansar are made from. I've still got to paint them.
You've got all this year to do that.
Yes, very true. It could be my new gang. Once I've completed the bounty hunters.
and
No, I think I'm not actually too bad apart from that. Hang on. Yeah, because the Chaos Warband I probably won't end up doing. Yeah, so it will be Escher Chimeric thingy, then the Bounty Hunters, then the Vansar, I think will be my order.
One of the ways I was thinking of squeezing some Ambot models in was going to be using those as Chaos Spawns for a Ad Mech Chaos Gang, for like a Dark Mechanicum Chaos Gang, which I'd love to do one day. You know, use
sounds
the
interesting.
As some big half demonic, half robot monstrosity.
You have to pull out your bits box and start sticking stuff all over the shop.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, so if we've gone to confirm news, we can actually start pulling apart the rulebook and see what's been changed, and hopefully Tony will be able to describe some of the bits that I'm confused with. So we will go on to the next segment. Okay guys, this is a section that's new. It's the what's changed in the new rulebook section. Generally we don't use this section very often because there's not a huge amount of rulebooks that get changed. But I got most of my information from Facebook, from Tabletop Narrative on YouTube. So these were some of the bits that he described that have changed, and obviously some bits that we've noticed. There will be other things that when we're finally like playing games and that other people will notice and stuff that we will bring up in further discussions in the future. But these are some of the things. So the toxin rule has changed ever so slightly. So now you don't roll 2 dice and the to protect yourself and the other guy roll 1. It's now just the 1 dice and against their toughness, isn't it?
Toughness,
or is it? Yeah, their toughness. Which means and then if you're successful, you roll an injury dice rather than them going straight out of action. Which I think we spoke about in the previous episode, because that was a potential change anyway, wasn't it?
Yeah, basically.
And it just calmed it down.
Yeah, the toxic roll behaves a bit more like the gas roll when it actually comes to harming the target. Like how you go about using them and injuring them in the first place is a bit different, but when it comes to actually inflicting damage, as it were, you roll dice. If you equal to or beat the target's toughness, you then roll an injury dice, which could result in nothing, flesh wound, or out of action.
And you get an armor save for it as well, don't you?
You get an armor save so long as the weapon that fired the shot doesn't ignore the armor.
Yes, yeah,
So
as long as you've got an armor save to make.
Yeah.
Okay, so that one's not. I mean, I think that it calms down the sort of it does anything or it does everything sort of thing, which was quite helpful. The versatile
before.
Yeah, the versatile rule, has that changed? Did you get to notice if that's changed?
Massively.
Yeah, okay. It's no longer a shooting attack, is it now? You've got the range, and you can engage someone at that range.
Essentially.
I think that's pretty much what it is.
So you can stand back and whack people with your weapon without being hit back.
Yeah,
if their weapon's not big enough. Okay.
Now, they can't make reaction attacks because you're out of range. You're not within that inch or whatever it is. So they're not technically engaging you, but you're engaging them.
Unless they have a versatile weapon too.
Oh yeah,
that has the
with,
same
with
range.
sufficient range. Yeah, with sufficient
Yeah.
range.
Because
Okay.
you could end up with, like, for example, a shock whip has a 3-inch range, whereas the pole arms and shock batons only have a 2-inch range.
I'm quite happy that my Escher leader now has a shock whip. It was kind of used.
To be honest, I quite liked it anyway because I just found it was a good melee weapon for the profile of the Escher leader to be wielding. But now the fact that she doesn't even have to risk getting attacked back is really good. That just get within 3 inches of you, or I can attack you like normal, like I was in combat.
So you get your same amount of attack, and that essentially means that even if you charge,
well, you wouldn't, because you'd fail a charge, wouldn't you? Well, technically you'd do a charge, but you'd fail the charge because you didn't get within base to base, so you'd be stopping an inch away.
Do you have to get in base to base, or do you just have to get into range of your weapon?
You just have to get in range of the weapon to be able to use it.
So then,
but you wouldn't get the bonus. You wouldn't get the bonus attack, maybe. Don't know.
Yeah,
technically you did charge.
Sorry,
so
Tone?
the only change to how normal combat works is normally when you charge, you have to end in base-to-base contact with the target, and then you do combat as normal. If you've got a versatile weapon, you just have to end within the range of your versatile weapon, and then you count as in combat for all other purposes.
Sweet. So it essentially add 3 inches to your charge range as well.
Basically, yes. Like, so your Escher leader, for example, has got 5-inch move. Then they get D3 on top of that as part of the charge move, and then the 3 inches for the range for the whip. So you could potentially engage someone 11 inches away at the start of your turn.
Are you allowed to declare a charge over a distance that is further? I suppose you are, aren't you? Because you can't pre-measure. So
yes, you because it's Necromunda, you can't pre-measure. You are allowed to declare a charge. You could declare a charge at someone 24 inches away, and you'd move your movement plus D3, and then stop there because you didn't get into base.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's a way of moving further forward than move. I suppose because a charge would be just one movement, wouldn't it? It would count as that's your only action, wouldn't it? So you're still better off to run twice.
So the one sort
just
of
move twice.
The one sort of downside to a versatile weapon is that you can't coup de grace a target because they're 3 inches away. For
Too
example,
far away. Yeah.
After you've done your combat attacks, which is why, depending on the target, you might choose to just actually move up to and engage them. You know, if you're just taking on a ganger or something, then you might just actually charge like normal. But if you don't want to risk a dangerous opponent, just hit them from 3 inches away.
Because what I was thinking is, if you're group activating and you've got a lowly Juve kicking around, you could charge but deliberately not reach, shot whip them, and hopefully if they're on the floor, then the Juve can run in and just kick them in the ghoulies and send them out of action.
Yeah, you could do that too.
Or, because talking about the webbers later with the Delaques, because that puts them prone. Like the web gauntlet seems quite cool, but we'll discuss that further on. So that is versatile. Blaze are supposedly changed, but I'm not 100% how.
So basically, Blaze has changed its wording so that it now behaves as intended. So before, when you got set on fire by a blaze weapon, you had a chance to put the fire out before you suffered any damage, and you didn't. You never did the running around like a headless chicken thing because of the sequencing of the actions. It like never really happened. Okay. Whereas now they've changed it so that when you activate and you've got a blaze counter, the very first thing that happens is you take the damage from being on fire. So like an automatic strength 3 hit, I think it is. Regardless, I think it's unless you're seriously injured, basically, you jump up and run around. Like you run around in a random direction. Because so what the issue was previously, if you had a blaze marker, it was probably because you'd been hit by a ranged attack, which meant that you were already prone at the start of your turn. Because you were prone, you didn't run around.
Run around like a headless chicken.
Putting the flames out.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas now, you take the damage first, regardless. If you are prone or you're standing, you jump up and run the random direction. then you can attempt to put the flames out.
So it kind of is, while you're in a panic, you end up running further away from the person trying to help you because you're just not thinking.
Yeah, basically, it now behaves like it was always intended to. You've been set on fire. You're definitely going to get hurt. You've definitely got the chance of being harmed by the fire, and you're probably going to run around in a bit of a panic. Whereas before, a lot of the time, it was just, oh, I'm on fire. Let me just put that out. Done.
Fair enough. Well done with the blaze rule then.
So they've basically made the blaze rule actually relevant. It does what it's supposed to do now.
Sweet. I've got another thing is nothing saves you from taking the nerve test to be broken when a friend is taken out within 3 inches. Oh, okay. So you take a nerve test regardless if someone's taken out 3 inches in front of you. It used to be that if you're pinned, engaged, or seriously injured, you were immune. Like, you didn't have to take the thing, but you do now. So if your friend explodes within 3 inches of you, regardless of what you're doing, it does affect you, and you will take a nerve test. So
yes, which is interesting because I assume this means that seriously injured fighters can now become broken.
Yeah, if they fail the nerve check.
Which couldn't happen before because they were too busy trying to hold their own guts in to also be afraid and trying to run away. So now, presumably, if a seriously injured fighter fails their cool check, they'd use their crawl move to crawl as far away from the enemy. Yeah. And regroup. And then in the end phase, you'd have to check for both bleed out and rally for them.
Which I kind of guess you would do. It's like watching an Aliens film and your like legs severed, but you're still trying to crawl away because you're about to get mauled by an alien with its like sharp tail or its drippy blood or whatever. So I guess you would be affected.
Typically, most gameplay, when your gang is seriously injured, he probably was crawling away from the fight anyway. So it's just making the broken mechanic a bit more relevant again, like it's actually going to happen more often.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that it affects pinned fighters. Like, just because you took a bolt shell to the chest and didn't get injured, but your mate did, it's still going to be panicking you a little bit, even though you're sort of rolling around on the floor trying to get back up.
Yeah, it definitely would. Next one.
Before you go on, what about the engaged status? So if you're engaged and then you fail your nerve check, you don't actually move and run. You don't actually move and run away until your next turn, or you got a chance of rallying, haven't you?
Well, so I believe how that one would work is you're in combat with someone, your mate gets blown up, and you fail your cool check. I believe when you fail the cool check, you immediately make a break move, like you immediately move away, and then when you activate, you move again because you're already broken. So if you're
your
engaged,
opponent would be able to attack you then as you run away.
I'd assume, having not seen the exact wording in the book, I would assume you'd have to attempt to break away from combat like you would do normally.
Oh, it's like the initiative test, isn't it? Yeah.
If you fail, you don't break away, and your opponent gets to wail on you for free.
Clonk you in the head, yeah.
Yeah. So to be honest, if you lose your cool because your mate's getting exploded or cut down, then actually what might happen is, in your panic, your opponent gets the better of you.
Yeah, makes sense.
Definitely makes sense.
Which then, when you get taken out, you then panic the next mate.
And it all goes wrong.
Domino everywhere. The house of cards will just come collapsing down. So gone.
Like I say, which that makes, again, like cool checks and breaking and rallying more relevant, because I've played a good number of Necromunda games now, and it's not very often that I've actually seen anyone break and run away from the fight. It hasn't come up that often.
I do agree. I don't even think I've used the broken counters yet up to this point. I know I've only played probably a handful of games, but I don't actually think I've used a broken counter.
And I've always forgotten to check when someone's died whether someone else was in 3 inches of them or not, to be fair. But now I know that it's changed. Hopefully this will stick in my head.
Yeah.
I think it also makes a bunch of the leadership skills more relevant because you're actually trying to keep your gang in check a bit more. Having pinned and injured fighters breaking is actually gonna be more disruptive to your plans than you expect. Like one of my favourite things to do in any game of Necromunda is just pinning opponents, just dropping las gunshots on them, just catching them with frag grenade blasts, whatever. Just because by being pinned, it disrupts their ability to do so much because you're taking all extra action away from them. Yeah. But previously in doing so, that meant that not much of my opponents would be prone to taking break tests because a lot of the time the gang is just pinned, making them previously immune to the roll. Now, I pin, one or two of the surplus guys, and then I actually take out the more important enemy fighter. But that might now start chain reactioning, panicking amongst the enemy gang. So for all I know, dropping a single lasgun round on that ganger has actually resulted in him being knocked down, his friend getting killed, him panicking and him running away, and running around the corner. And now it's taken him 2 turns to get back into the fight. So I actually think keeping you guys not afraid, keeping them unbroken is going to be a more important thing to consider in gameplay. And one thing that I always have to remember, because I always forget this part, is the fact that you get, I think it's an extra. You get an extra point of cool or better. You get a bonus for every friendly fighter within so many inches when you're taking those cool checks, because whilst there's still a fair number of your friends around, you're more confident. So being more coordinated as a gang is going to be more relevant because you're going to actually have to keep together to avoid getting panicked.
And then I'll bring my flamers to the party. Keep all your models nice and close together, please.
Well, that leads us into the next one, which is actually the change to template weapons now. So you can get cover from template weapons if the center of the blast isn't behind the cover. So flamer templates, if something's coming at you and you're behind cover, you can get cover from it now.
Yeah, and how do they determine the centre? I think that's for blast, isn't it?
Yeah,
it doesn't matter
for
with flamer template because being in cover just determines. Oh wait, no, I don't know how they ruled it with a flamer. Because what they were saying now was for blast weapons, if there is a barricade or cover between the affected model and the centre of the blast marker, then the model gets +1 to its armour save. That's the benefit it gets from the cover. I don't know, again, without seeing the exact ruling in the book, whether or not the same is true of a flamer template.
Yeah, so you're going to have to determine the centre of the template.
I'd imagine if it was the case, they'd probably say if there was cover between the target model and the firer.
Yeah, because maybe. You're imagining the flame is coming from the flamer out. Direction, yeah, and so if you're behind, if you're flaming them from the back, then tough titties. But if someone's flaming you and you have got a cover, you'd kind of imagine they're ducked behind it.
Yep. What it does mean is that flak armor is actually pretty good now, because if you're behind cover and you're wearing flak armor, that gives my Escher gangers a 4+ save against a frag grenade.
As long as the grenade blast was in front of the barricade,
Yeah, which there's an arguable incentive now for trying to actually be accurate with your blast markers. If you can actually land them behind the cover, then the opponent, you took a trickier shot to get it to land there, but now the opponent doesn't get a better save because you've actually landed the blast on top of them.
No, definitely. But yeah, that wasn't a too big one, but they're just little ones that seem to make a bit more sense. The crumper is no longer unwieldy, and it has rending now, which is cool. So I've got one of my models already has a crumper, so that's always
one of the
helpful.
Weapons which I always wanted to take on my Goliath gang, but I never did previously. But now that's enough of an incentive that I think I'd bring one again now.
Yeah, and it's my guy that's got the blindfold over his eyes. It's based off the bullet farmer. So he can get involved in the gang now, but essentially it takes up its it's unwieldy. So I mean, it's not unwieldy. But it takes up 2 slots or something. I think I can't remember. But essentially, you can move and fire, which is always helpful. The stim slug stash is only once per game now. You can't just keep caning it throughout the whole
To be
game.
honest, that's probably better for the health of the Goliaths because the amount of
Yeah,
times
I think
they
so.
end up
People have
injuring
killed their
themselves too
models.
much.
Yeah.
Goliaths have rights.
Yeah. The hazard suit's quite good now. It's immune to blaze and radphage together. So
Which also with the rad suit, if you've got the environment suit and a respirator, you're also immune to gas.
oh, nice.
So if you actually take respirators on your hazard suit guys, then you're suddenly immune to blaze, rad, and gas, which is actually a lot of relevant weaponry.
Does that still work if the gas is on the inside of the suit?
I was going to say that it essentially protects from all of my farts.
No, those
you
Nurgle
need to
cultists in hazard suits still get to enjoy their blessings.
It needs to protect against seismic as well. To be fair, if it's going to save my trumps and rending, I think fleshbane. Do we have fleshbane in Necromunda?
Too much.
Okay, fair enough. And then now the psychers are fully fledged in the rule books now, and I think that'll probably be something we can talk about next month.
Yeah, I'm going to use a psyker tomorrow.
Ooh.
My Gene Stealer cult.
Oh yes, so you'll have had some first-hand experience.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that next. I mean, we'll talk about the Delaque Brute today, but obviously we can go into psychers next month. I think that'd be cool. So I'm sure there's other things in that rule book, like I say, and in the gangs from the Underhive book that we've missed, but we'll find them as we play. I think everything that we've noticed has been a positive change. It's made everything make a bit more sense.
Big thing,
definitely.
The big thing for me is not having to cart around a load of books.
Yeah, it's always helpful.
Okay, I haven't bought the books yet, like the new gang one and the actual rule book, but the prospect of not having to have 5 books with me that I might be simultaneously flicking through to be able to play a game, and just have one that I could have a few bookmarks in to highlight some pages I need to flick to, that would just be so much better.
One last thing, which isn't so much a change but more a clarification, is the new weapon trait sidearm, which basically is just denoting which weapons you can make a close combat attack with. So like auto pistols, las pistols have the rule sidearm now, so you can make up to 1 close combat attack with them. But then like the hand flamer does not have the rule sidearm.
Because the flamer doesn't have the hand flamer does it? So you can't shoot it in hand-to-hand combat.
Correct. Like, so they've specified now what can and can't be used in combat.
Okay, guys, we are back. I've had to get a new computer, and we are swinging with part 2 of the episode. So apologies for the delay. That will purely be my computer's fault. Thankfully, I was able to pull the information off my laptop. It still kind of works, my old laptop. It just, the fan doesn't work anymore, so it cuts out after about 10 seconds when it overheats. So when I was downloading it onto my memory stick, I was blowing my airbrush into the vents to try and keep the computer laptop cool, just so I could download it. But thankfully, it was there, so we don't have to re-record the beginning of the podcast.
That's another segment.
That would have been horrible.
That's another segment entirely, isn't it? Sort of using hobby tools in real life. I use my airbrush to cool my laptop.
Yeah, when the fan gave up.
I use my razor saw to prune the bushes.
That's not a bad idea. I've got an ultrasonic cleaner. What could I clean with it?
Teeth?
I don't know. Yeah, I'd have to remove my teeth though. It seems a bit extreme. Maybe when I'm older.
Tomorrow.
But I also think, because we're about to go into the showcase, I think it might have had something to do with the Delaque. I've got a feeling they didn't want to talk about their gang, so they've rigged my computer to explode.
Could be.
But I've managed to get a second computer. Yeah, I managed to get a second computer, so thankfully we can record unless it dies randomly by the Delaque again. So we'll start with Michael reading the first bits of lore.
There's something very unsettling about the Delaque, something that makes the skin of honest and even dishonest citizens crawl. While other clan houses proudly proclaim their strengths and scream in their dominance to all who will listen, Delaque silently waits and watches, leaving others to wonder what dark thoughts the House of Secrets harbours. Many myths surround the Delaque, though it is widely known that long ago the house sold its soul to Lord Helmwar in exchange for a special place among his servants. Acting as Lord Helmwar's eyes and ears below the wall, they siphon information from those places and peoples beyond the reach of his more conventional agents. For a steady supply of information, the house enjoys trade contracts, desirable hive districts, and off-world technologies. It is said that while the other clans struggle for the spoils of their world, House Delaque plays a larger game, its sights firmly set upon joining the ranks of the noble houses. Of course, all this is a story told by the Delaques themselves, so is more than likely a lie.
Okay, thanks, Michael. And so we'll start with the top 3 features for the Delaque. So I've got their trench coats, their long trench coats, they're super spies, and they're going to have very cold heads because none of them wear hats and they've got no hair. Is there anything else that leaps out to you guys?
The
silence weapons.
Yeah, very sneaky.
They're very tall. They're actually a lot taller than most of the other gangers.
So they have to duck.
Yeah, you've got to be careful on the doorways, haven't they? Especially without the early warning system of hair on the top of your head, you're going to be forever cutting your head.
Early warning system.
So they don't think of these things, do they?
No. You might have to paint some little cut marks on their heads.
Necromunda's a dangerous place.
Well, apparently.
I've put game style, which normally we used to do, but I don't really quite know it with this group of people. I'm guessing they try and sit back, but I think a lot of the gangs have a kind of mix now, don't they? Unless they're obvious ones like Goliath.
My impression. Sorry, Tony. Go on, where you go.
I was just going to say, I don't think there's anything that really over incentivizes them being like a hang back and shoot gang, except for the fact that their champions and leaders can take shooting skills. Like, they don't seem like they have a huge selection of weaponry or war gear that helps them fight at range the same way the Vansar do. It's like you can have like a champion with a plasma gun and a shooting skill, but your regular gang as a whole just seems to be pretty like regular stat line gangers with regular issue weaponry. Or any of their fancy stuff tends to be more shorter range, so you want to be kind of like close engaging.
Yeah, I can see them doing well, or specialising in all the stealth missions where you're trying to infiltrate somewhere, like when you've got the sentries and trying not to have the alarm raised because of their proliferation of silent and quiet weaponry. I can see that being a thing for them.
Yes, I do agree entirely. Yeah.
And also, I think they're can't think. What's the stat initiative? He's pretty good, certainly for their leader. I think it's something like 3+. So I've got visions of my leader just jumping and bouncing around off the scenery, and just doing some crazy jumping off of stuff, and tooling them up appropriately, just to attack someone from an unexpected angle. Surely you're not going to jump down that 11 inches? Yes, I am.
Oh, I do that with baby. I do that with my Esches all the time. The amount of times my Initiative 2 plus champions, they go to make jumps over gaps between walkways, and the amount of times I roll that one and it's going to fall straight down to the floor.
It's them high heels
every
nice. So something that is making them a bit unique. Shall I go through some of their weapons?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, did you have quite a few unique weapons?
Yes, we do. So I'll start with the throwing knives. So they're short. Their strength is
3.
3, yeah. They're
so short range is going to be 6 inches, isn't it?
Oh, it's because it's the thing I was looking at. It was their distance because they're getting thrown, aren't they?
Yeah, so it's going to be 6-inch short range and then 12-inch long range.
Assuming you don't improve the strength of your thrower at some point during a campaign.
Yeah, that's something I'll be looking at doing.
And they come with silence, so during sneak attacks, no test is made to raise the alarm. And if using pitch black rules, the hidden fighter does not get revealed, and they have toxin. So pretty sweet for if you know you are going to do the stealthy missions.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you get to choose your missions, don't you? A lot of the time, like if you've well, depending on how you work and things.
One slight aside with changes we were mentioning in the previous segment about updates, they added silent as an attribute to all needle weapons.
Oh, okay.
So, just like the Delaque gang, the Escher gang's also now got access to quite a few actual silenced and suppressed weaponry. But
nice.
Equally, that means that taking needle weapons on your Delaque gang is also just as valid for them. Like if you get them from the trading post or wherever.
Okay. Another cool weapon is Web Gauntlet. So that's strength 3. It's got backstab, melee, and web. And that's like the normal web rule. If you roll 2 wounds, they're automatically webbed. Treat the fighter as seriously injured. In the recovery phase, they can roll out as normal. But I've got a question. So if they're webbed, that means they're seriously injured. If they're seriously injured in combat, do they automatically then get coup de grace?
90% of the time, yes. Yeah, so long as your normal combat sequencing has behaved, you've gone in, you've attacked them, you've injured them, you then finish them with a coup de grace.
So if you go in and you've got like 3 or 4 attacks with that web gauntlet, you've got quite a good chance of coup de grace them straight out then, because all you've got to do is wound on 1 strength 3. They're then seriously injured, and then they're seriously injured and they're in combat. They're then taken out of action, aren't
they? Yes. So they go out of action, which, like, you got to imagine in this case, it's like, you've webbed up the target, at which point then you probably jam, some knockout drugs into them or whatever, somehow knock them out cold.
I quite like that weapon.
Yeah. Well, they also the backstab, don't they? Give you +1 to your strength for if you're behind them.
I think it's +1 to hit, is it? Or is it strength? I can't remember. One or the other.
Yeah. So that increases your chances of actually doing something, which is good.
I quite like the weapon on it.
It's like sort of the Vulcan death grip, isn't it? Just sort of laying behind someone,
a messy
squeeze them on the neck.
But it's like a squeezy, gooey hand. Yeah. So, could you imagine just someone coming up to you with like a drippy hand? They're going to be on their own. No one's going to want to go near them.
Moving on.
After that, then there's the new gun, a Fachette pistol. So this looks a bit like an auto gun with a silencer at the end. So strength 3. Rapid fire 1, sidearm and silent. Yep. But wasn't there 2 types of firing ammunition for it?
Yes, it also has flesh bane ammo, I believe. Which it's basically, this is a really neat weapon. It's basically a combi weapon, but it doesn't actually have the combi profile because it's like a shotgun. You've got multiple rounds you fire rather than it literally being 2 barrels. And basically, like the primary mode is literally a suppressed auto pistol. That's what it is. And the secondary mode is a rapid fire needle pistol, basically.
Yeah, because the fleshbane one comes with toxin, but the solid shot is just rapid fire sidearm silent, isn't it?
Yes.
Cool.
So being a rapid fire toxin weapon, I think makes it pretty unique. I think it's the only rapid fire toxin weapon in the game. So you could land multiple toxic hits in the one shot.
And so you've got even more chance of getting them out of action and stuff like that.
Yes. It's brilliant. I think that's pretty much what you'd call the signature weapon of the gang, really.
Yeah.
It's what a lot of them are kind of dual wielding or holding in the air in the model poses that you can see on the Games Workshop site. And then there's the web gun and web pistol. So the web pistol is strength 4 and the web gun is strength 5. So that's pretty good. So, and then all you got to do is roll to wounds. Again, it's the same situation as a web gauntlet. Just roll to wound. If you wound them, then you're all stuck. Just hope no one runs near you while you're stuck on the floor, because you'll get stabbed. And then there's the skin blade, which helps you to supports your escape if you're captured. So it's just a little blade under your skin, I guess, that you get to kind of stab your captors, and you're more likely to break out. And then you can get gun shrouds, which you can put on normal guns essentially, and it gives them the silent trait.
Gives them the silent treatment.
So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm guessing I didn't look properly. Of course, you can't give gun shrouds to every weapon, or can you?
I think in Necromunda you can give it to basically anything. I don't remember there being any restrictions. I think you could technically put a gun shroud on a heavy flamer if you wanted.
Nice. So you could put a gun shroud on a heavy stubber.
But
or a last cannon.
It makes me laugh, the idea of a heavy flamer being silent, because even if it's silent, you can still see it. It's still a fireball that's coming down the corridor.
Yeah, but they'll be like, what on earth was that? Or like, you'll be looking at your mate who's got like his last cannon hole in him, going, what just happened? Oh, I want to silence all my weapons. Well, guns. I don't think you can silence your sword. It's pretty silent anyway, until you hit someone with it. I suppose the weapon's only helpful being silent once you shoot someone, because as soon as they go, ow, then there's going to be a problem. Or as soon as you see Dave's got a last cannon shot through his chest.
That's what the web gauntlet's for, isn't it? You put your hand over their mouth.
Oh, true. Okay. And in regards to the skills, the leader has agility and cunning, like you were saying, Tony, with the ability to get around a lot more. And the champion, the juvenile specialist, have cunning and shooting. So it's another one of those ones like the corridor where they're all slightly split and slightly different, whereas most gangs, they're all kind of pretty universal, but this one has the champ's juvenile specialist having a slightly different skill as their other skill, as opposed to the leader who has agility and cunning. So, is there anything else you wanted to say on the gang itself before we talk about what gangs we've chosen on our roster?
The only thing I can think of with the actual models themselves is, I think if you want to try and create a gang that looks dynamic, I think it's going to be a struggle. Well, it's not a struggle. It's going to be a challenge for a hobbyist to try and move the cloaks and the coats around, because they're very tall, lean, and the poses are, I'm not saying they're static, because there's a couple of guys that are in a walking pose, but I'm thinking of other models from another range, and you've got the coats billowing in the wind and stuff like that to make it look more dramatic.
I think I'd seen something on Twitter already where someone had made some Delaque gang members, but they'd cut them off at the waist and then used, I think it's Cadian guardsman legs.
Right.
So their coat looks more like, sort of like a knee length jacket that's all like tied in with a belt.
Okay.
And then they'd taken the respirator off the front of the jacket, which actually makes the jacket look a lot more open.
Right. Okay.
So that had a bit more of like coat and jacket and trousers look to it rather than the full length robe.
Yeah.
And I think it worked quite well actually. It didn't look like they'd hacked half of one model and put it on half of another. It looked like they sort of went together.
That's good.
Yeah, I know. I feel the pain because I remember trying to make, actually I did make them, but making models using the Skitarii upper body and then using the Scion legs and bits and pieces but even then, even when with the robe of the Scion model not being as Delaque, like covering as the Delaque one, even then getting the legs in was a challenge. There was filing and cutting and sanding and bits and pieces. So, like, long coats do make it difficult. But then at the same time, I can't green stuff a long coat. So, I'm glad there are models with long coats.
Yeah, I'm still looking forward to getting some because I want to get a couple of boxes, and I really want to do them with a more of a gloss, shiny coat.
That's right.
Look rather than the dusty, because a lot of my other models are all where I just throw washes over things. They look all dusty and dirty anyway. So I want to do something a little bit different and go for a more gloss, sort of shiny leather sort of look.
I'm curious whether or not you can do the reverse and use these models as guardsmen in greatcoats, because that's always something that people are wanting to try and find a way of converting. And I don't know how easily it might translate. I have a feeling it might be a little bit difficult. It's not quite got the guardsman look, but maybe if it's done right, it might work.
It's an expensive unit, though, isn't it? It's going to have to be a special weapons unit type thing, or you won't want to do it as regular. Yeah, you won't want to do it as just regular Joes, because I'm going to want 20 of these. So you sort of four boxes.
Could it be the commissars?
Yeah, it
could do well as commissars.
Commissar, fleet. I guess it would be all of the upper.
Yeah, all the sort of officers.
Like the flight guy and all of those sorts of dudes. As you can tell, I've never had an IG army, so it's just basically not the ones getting shot in the face or getting shot in the back of the head by the commissar. I mean, they can make the psychers as well, but yeah, there's loads of opportunity. It's out of the gangs that I haven't got, Delaque and Cawdor are the ones I want to get still. Delaque and so Cawdor, I want to do the female ones, but I've got to wait until they release the Sisters of Battle stuff, and then the Delaque I'll probably just keep as standard and do what you do, Michael, just trying out different sorts of styles of painting instead of mucking about with them. Just maybe I'll.
You're going to saw them to bits. You can't leave a model alone.
I'll try not to do. I think I won't have so many with the guns up in the air sort of thing. Try and give them a down by the body sort of look. But I probably will. But it will only really be the arms that I've got the ability to muck about with. So it'll be like a self-control thing. I won't muck about with them too much. Okay. So we haven't done a roster for a while. So next up will be a roster.
Fun times.
Okay, guys, welcome back. We're at the roster part, and I think Michael wants to go first for the roster.
Yeah, let's go for it. So, my gang has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 members. There is a leader, top of the shop. I've chosen to give them digital lasers, a stiletto knife, and a las pistol. So he's got a couple of close combat weapons, and skill-wise, I gave him spring up. And I've just got visions of this guy just zipping about and getting places and just stabbing people in the back. That's my sort of plans of him. That kind of follows through for the couple of champions I've got. I've got pretty much a uniform theme of weaponry throughout the gang. I've gone with throwing knives and the Fletcher pistols, and then stiletto knives where I can for the sort of 3 items. One of the champions are given backstab, so that gives him his better chance. If he can get behind models, then he's got a better chance of sticking the knife in. And then the other one I gave infiltrate, which I'm now recalling Tony mentioning that may be a trap for people to have their guys out on a limb in the middle of nowhere rather than supporting the rest of the gang.
I'm actually not a huge fan of infiltrate. I think it's one of these ones where I think it looks better than it is, sort of thing. I think you're actually just pretty much putting a valuable member of your gang out in an exposed position, or they're just very much like a heat-seeking missile. They go for the one target, they wreck that one thing really well, and then they inevitably get answered, like, blown away by the enemy gang. But if done right, it can be great. But I do think champions are generally better in the middle of your gang, sort of coordinating things and lending support, rather than being out on a limb by themselves.
I can't disagree, especially after the I'll explain that later in the show with the games played, because shock news, I did play a game. Saucy. Right, moving on. So I've got 4 gangers, just to keep within the legal limits of how you're supposed to form up the gang. I'll give them 1 web gun and the Fletcher pistol. So I'm trying to get everyone to have silent weaponry of some description. So the web gun is just there just because it's a web gun, and I've got loads of them because of Gene Stealer Cult models that I've got. I've got plenty of web guns, so I might as well use some of those on some gangers.
In theory, you could silence it as well.
Yeah, very nice too. And then I've got 3 gangers which are all identical. They've got throwing knives and Fletcher pistols, so I'm just going full on quiet mode. And then finally, just to round out the gang, I've got 1 Juve who's got a stiletto knife that he hasn't worked out how to throw yet, and then a las gun.
Are they called silent but deadly?
They could be. I haven't thought of a name, but I might do some pondering. So that's me. I can't. Tony, can you remember what a spring up does? Is that to do with when you fall down something and then you can get up quickly?
No, it's the pins when you're pinned.
Oh, I see. So it doesn't cost you an action, does it? It doesn't cost you an action point to get up.
You have to pass.
But you have to pass
an initiative.
Yeah, but their initiative is pretty good, isn't it? I think it's 3+ for the leaders.
Champions are 4 up.
Yeah, and then the leader was 3 up.
Yes.
So that was what I did with him.
Nice.
I think the idea was that he was going to be jumping off of platforms, and then in the incidents where he hurts himself and falls over, then he can get up quickly. That's the idea. Okay. When he breaks his.
It's a very elite gang you've got.
Yeah, it was quite expensive points wise. Well, even like the gangers, I suppose, by tooling them up with 2 weapons, they start to get a bit pointy.
Well, you've got deadly weapons on every guy.
Yeah.
So they've all got potential to do some really nasty things.
That's it. That's 1,000 points. 8 models.
Okie dokie. So then is that Mr. Tony's turn?
Yeah. So this is my first ever actual roster on the show. But yes, my gang is a little bit bigger. I've got 1, 2, 3. I have 11 fighters in my 1,000-point gang. So I've got a leader, 2 champions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gangers, 2 dupes. Is that right? I think that's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, no, 6 gangers, 2 champions, a leader, and 2 dupes. My leader's got a Fletcher pistol, a shock stave, and some photon flash grenades. And he has the inspirational leadership skill. So I think the inspirational skill is going to be really useful for this gang, because it's the one where whenever a fighter fails a cool check, within like a certain distance of the leader. I think it's like 6 inches or something. If they fail the call check, you can take a leadership check for the leader, and if he passes it, the fighter counts as having passed their call check. And so the two main things that this is useful for is for when you're trying to fire at a target that's not the closest, because you have to take that call check to see if you can do that. And when friendly gangers are getting blown away around you, and you're taking your call checks to see whether or not you run away or not. So yeah, with the new change now, where you do take call checks even if you're injured or pinned or whatever, I think it's going to be a lot more useful now, all this skill, because you're going to be taking those call checks a lot more often to actually try and see whether or not you get panicked by the things going on around you. So my leader can keep the rest of the gang in line and get them firing at the right things and staying in the fight.
Yeah, makes sense.
I didn't even think of leadership skills when I was doing my...
That's usually my go-to with the leaders. The only people who can take them, so I make use of them.
Yeah, it's very true.
And the shock stave basically is it's more or less just a straight melee weapon. I think it's just like strength user, AP minus something, damage 1. But it's got the shock rule, and importantly, it's got versatile at 2-inch range.
Rule. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your favourite.
It is. Oh, it's brilliant. It's so good now. It's versatile. So my leader he doesn't have to risk getting harmed back too much. He can sort of get close to targets, hit them with his shock stick, and be leading and coordinating the rest of the gangers. So they can isolate the targets, and he can get in there and bunk them on the head.
Awesome.
And the photon flash grenades are basically, I think they're a really underused grenade. Actually, I think they're really good. They're a 5-inch blast, so they're a very big blast. But rather than doing damage, anyone that's caught in them has to take an initiative check, and if they fail the initiative check, they become blinded, which means that they lose a ready marker if they've got one, or they don't gain one in the next round if they've already used their ready marker for that round. So you're basically taking actions away from enemy fighters. So when you're completely disrupting them and getting them all befuddled and blinded and they can't really coordinate, that's when the rest of your gangers can then sort of like properly leap on them. And as the leader, he can group activate, so he throws his photon in, flashes all the opponents, then sends in his 2 other activating friends to sort of then deal with wherever these now blinded targets are.
Yeah, because I think that might have been one of the grenades I gave one of my bounty hunters when I was doing my bounty hunter gang. I think that and the scare grenade was pretty cool as well.
So
the fear, or is it fear or something?
Yeah, it's like fear gas grenades. I love those. They're brilliant in my extra gang. So yeah, my leader's very much doing a support role. He's being a leader. He's coordinating with inspirational. He's keeping people in the fight. He's blinding targets. He's getting close to, but not putting his own neck on the line when it actually comes to taking enemies on in a fight. And he's got a toxic pistol as well when need be, so he can still take out some targets at range.
Well, any good leader should send everyone else to do the work, shouldn't they?
Yep. And obviously, because he's got the Fletcher pistol, that means that it's he has a gun shrouded weapon, so he has a silenced attack at range if need be. Then I've got 2 champions. A first one it's a dual pistol champion. So he's got the skill Gunfighter, which is the one that lets him not suffer the -1 to hit when firing 2 pistols, and if he wants, he can fire at 2 separate targets with them.
Nice.
And then the 2 pistols he's armed with is an auto pistol with a gun shroud and a Fletcher pistol.
Okay.
So he's essentially armed with 2 suppressed auto pistols, and if he wants, he's got his rapid fire needle weapon as well that he can use.
Nice.
How come you didn't go for 2 Fletcher pistols? Or I think we've said there's about 6 different ways to say it. Fletcher pistol. How come you didn't go for 2 of the same?
Because it's half the points, so I can get more stuff in the list.
Okay.
Because the plan basically would be, when you actually play out the campaign, you would buy a second Fletcher pistol for him anyway, so then he's armed with 3. so that if one of them runs out of ammo, he still has 2 pistols to go. So his backup is the standard auto pistol.
Fair enough.
But to begin with, to keep the cost down so you can get more in the gang and have more fighters, start with just 1 weapon that's toxic and then his other pistol, so he's got 2 weapons. And then on top of that, he's also got photon flash grenades for blinding people when that's more useful.
It's your more ball control, isn't it?
Yep. And then my second champion has a shotgun with just standard rounds. Throwing knives, so he still has a form of suppressed attack when he needs it. And a toxic attack as well. So all my champions and leaders have some form of suppressed and / or toxic attacks when they need it. And then guess what kind of grenades he's got?
Photon.
The flash ones?
Yes, he does.
So the name of your warband's have something to do with flashing, isn't it?
That's the trench coat.
Michael's is silent but deadly, and yours is like the downtown flashes or something.
Stop it.
And then his skill is evade, which is the one that means if he's not in partial or hard cover, then enemies are at -1 to hit him, or if they're at long range when firing at him, they're at -2 to hit him. Because he's going to need to be sort of getting into a good position to get his shotgun effectively used. So being able to step out of cover but still effectively be in cover is going to be really useful for him.
Yeah, see, essentially he's better off to really be out of cover than he is in cover.
If he can be in hard cover, that's better. But what he means is when he needs to break from cover, he's not as exposed.
Yeah.
It's the flashes again.
So it's about exposing again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely a trend.
Yeah. Long trench coats.
Yeah. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gangers, of which I've got 1 ganger who's got a long rifle, because I do think it's worth having 1 long rifle in a gang, and it's your starting special weapon. You know, it's really useful in 3D boards. In Zone Mortalis, it's still useful for long lines of sight on corridors. He's just a nice cheap ganger who basically either takes pot shots at targets or deters certain approaches towards your gang. So just a nice little useful long range ganger rather than a champion with like infiltrates and monoscopes and gun shrouds and a plasma gun and whatever. You know, it doesn't need to be an all invested expensive champion. It's just a ganger with a long range weapon. Just useful. Then I have my favourite, the ganger with lasgun. I have 4 of these.
Oh, lasgun. Boo.
Yep, it's all about just landing those hits. Like, just knocking people over, getting them pinned, forcing them to not do everything they want to do. And DZ guys that just start taking bullets, like, they're the ones who they activate first, they get in the line of sight, they present the tempting targets, they then get the enemy to step out of cover to take them out. They're the shields for the leaders and champions and so on. Like, ganger with lasgun, or your gang's equivalent basic gun, tends to be the most useful tool I find in the game. However, that said, 2 of them are lucky enough to have the expenses of some throwing knives.
Nice.
So that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 5 of my 11 gangers have some form of suppressed attack. So when it does come to scenarios with sentries and so on, you can use half the gang to get into position to wait for when the bullets start flying, and the other half to sneak up on the sentries and try and deal with as many as possible, as silently as possible.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And then my last ganger has a shotgun and some throwing knives.
Oh.
He's more the damage dealer ganger. Like, of all the gangers, he's the one who will step out at the opportune moment to try and put down someone who's like bigger and better than him. He's like the ganger who goes champion hunting, because I don't mind if he gets harmed. He's a ganger, but he's got weaponry that's good enough to do some damage to champions and leaders.
Right.
And then to round it all out, I have 2 Juves with stub guns, who basically, they are the meat shields. They're the ones who run up and open the doors, the ones who trigger the frag traps, the ones who just attempt to draw targets out. Bodies, always useful. Nice cheap 25 credits of Ganger with stub gun. Well, Juve with stub gun.
If they survive the situation, then they'll learn from it.
Yep, and if
become champions.
If they advance in the campaign and do quite well, and actually are worth spending a bit of resources on, then they can probably be upgraded to get some Fletcher pistols, because that's actually a really versatile and offensive weapon for anyone, really. So it makes a Juve quite a concern when suddenly they're running around with toxic weapons. But to begin with, a nice simple stub gun.
Cool.
That's my list.
Sweet.
Nice.
Then it's to me then, and you'll like my skills. I'll let you know what they are in a minute. So I've got my leader. He comes with shock stave, the long rifle, and I've given him a flechette pistol as well. So, like you were saying, if it comes to a game where, like Zone Mortalis, where it gets a bit closer, he's still got the option to be a bit more helpful. But his idea is to keep out of the way, ideally. And I've given him infiltrate. But for the opposite reason than Tony normally says that they're not helpful, that I plan to use infiltrate to get them into areas that will make him safer. So I can get him up in places where he wouldn't necessarily, it would take someone a lot of turns to get up to. So that's why I've given him infiltrate. So it kind of, he doesn't have to be at the back line, but he can also be up somewhere, up a couple of floors, getting a good shot from the beginning.
And this is your leader.
Yeah, that's my leader.
He's not going to be doing much leading.
No. No, he's not. But he's going to do much shooting instead.
Is he?
I mean, I probably will have to muck about with this in the future, but my champion has got a stiletto knife, an auto pistol, and a long rifle as well. And they've got infiltrate too. And so he's not all on his own. They could be in two separate corners, so it means that you can only get to one, really, unless you start separating people off, or they can join as a super team. The second champion is my close combat guy, so I've given him stiletto knife, digilaser for the extra attack, throwing knives, so he can, if he does need to do a throwing attack, a shooting attack, he can still stay silent. And I gave him web gauntlet because I like the idea. So if he charges, I've got a +1 attack, and also with the digilaser, he gets
the digital ladle,
an extra attack as well. Yeah. So that's more chances to get someone gummed up in your sticky hand, and then more likely to coup de grace out. But if the toughness is high, then I can go stiletto knife instead, which has been nerfed down a little bit, but that's for my benefit because I have Goliaths and I don't like toxin. It can go away. But I haven't thought of a skill for him yet because there's only really, because they can only obviously have the cunning and the shooting, and I don't really need shooting for him unless I want to hip shoot throwing knives, which is a possibility.
I'd probably go evade.
Evade, yeah, I was thinking that as well. So even if he gets caught out in the, like someone moves around to get a better shot, he still has a...
Quite often, if he's got into combat and he's killed his target, he's then probably going to be stood in the open.
That's very true, because a consolidate won't get him enough out of the way generally. So yeah, that might be the way to go with that one. Then I have pretty boring after that. It's just the gangers, so it's... Oh no, sorry, I have a specialist with a long rifle also. I do like the long rifle, as you can tell. And then I've got gangers, one with dual auto pistols. Next one with an auto gun. So these are quite cheap, and then another ganger with shotgun, and another one with shotgun. So the shotgun ones I'm hoping to keep with the close range, maybe, and then the auto pistols too. So just essentially two separate groups. One group out of the way. But you're right though. Thinking about it, if my leader has infiltrate, and so does my champion, and they infiltrate away from their gangers, then all the group activation becomes redundant. So I might have to have a play about
You're
with
also
it.
going to lose your auto passing call checks and things like that for being within range of your leaders and champions and things.
Which is all more reasons why I'm not a huge fan of infiltrate, or at least certainly not as a starting skill on gangs. Like perhaps once you're mid-campaign and you get to recruit your third or fourth champion, then maybe you've got room to have a specialist who goes off doing their own thing because you've already got your core of your gang being coordinated by your existing leaders and champions.
So I was just thinking it was more the ability to, if I can infiltrate, it doesn't have to be near the enemy. It can be putting them on top of a high area to get nice shots off for most of the game sort of thing. But you do lose out on quite a lot of the other benefits that a leader may give. So getting him up and getting him...
The other way to make use of it is you basically just use infiltrating more like a vanguard move, where that champion or leader is kind of out at the front of the gang because they're being deployed somewhere near an objective or something critically important, and they're there to sort of be doing whatever it is the scenario requires them to be doing early on, getting to the loot caches and dragging them back, opening the doors to the sump monster or whatever. They can be doing whatever's required of the mission while both gangs are trying to scrabble to get to that point. And then you almost have the rest of your gang sort of catch up, and then once they're there, your champion is doing the supportive stuff and coordinating them. Yeah. Just because you can infiltrate doesn't mean you have to go one extreme or the other and be all the way up a tower near nobody or directly as close to the enemy as possible so you can charge them. You can play the middle ground.
Boo. One extreme or the other, Tony. That's the way to do it. No half measures. We're either in or out.
Mostly out.
Okay, so there are gangs. I know I need to do a bit more work on, and I'm going to definitely give it a change by the time I actually get my models. I might just do like Michael's done and start by getting them actually to get a bit closer, throwing knives, keeping them out of the way, but close enough.
I like the idea of him being like an ultra silent gang, and then just trying to specialise in those missions where you don't want to be setting the alarm off. And because to a degree you're getting to choose the sort of missions that you're playing. All right, it's going to be almost like a one-trick pony, and you're going to potentially struggle in other scenarios where the mission brief is a bit different. But for those particular ones, I don't know, when you're trying to rescue someone, or I don't know, I think you could. It's just fun. Stealth mode, ninja assassins. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Fair enough. So we'll get into Conversion Corner then. So if we're going to build these guys, but we're not going to use the GW, what else can we use? So we'll be back in a sec. Okay guys, welcome back to Conversion Corner. Bit difficult I found finding possible Delaque models. I found 3 possible ones. So I'll start with the obvious one, which is the Heresy Miniatures.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
Line. Yeah, they're metal, they've been around for a long time, and I always see them at Salute, and I've always been close to buying them, but I just never have. But yeah, they're trench coat guys. a lot of them have different actions, like there's running ones, sprinting ones. One's doing a cartwheel, from what I remember.
Yeah, they're very dynamic.
Yeah, there's a boss one who is a lot fatter, who's holding a missile launcher. There's one that has a minigun. They are very cool, and like I say, all these conversion things we'll find.
I think the only
I'll
problem,
link them on.
the only problem I can think of with them now is that the aesthetic has changed a bit in that the new current models are very lean and tall. So you wouldn't be able to create a gang, I don't think, where you mix and match between the two. Like you wouldn't say, "Oh, I'll get one box of the GW models," and then you can intersperse
it's one or the other
with some of those. So as you say, you'd go all one or the other. But they are very nice models, I must admit, and I've got one for my bounty hunter. So I'm already sort of part way there.
Yeah, they're more the old school sort of trench coat one rather than long coat spy that they are now. So yeah, you definitely have to go one or the other. There wouldn't be much mix and matching going on. There's one called Easy Riding Miniatures. I found they are like a tall, thin, trench coaty sort of gang, but they are, it's weird. It's like I'll put the link up, but it's just like what Delaque would have been in the style that they are 5 years previously, but obviously Games Workshop have gone a long way now. But they look these ones look way more like the newer sorts of Delaque. Their trench coats are look more leathery. They're kind of got clasps the same way that the new Delaque have. They're bald.
Permission to do live Googling?
They're all pistoled.
Permission to do live Googling, just so I can see what you're talking about.
Yeah, Phil, So they're called Slicks. The gang, they're Corporate War Slicks, and they're from East Riding Miniatures. If you've got my crib sheet, Michael, it's got the hyperlink attached to it. So while I'm talking, you can...
I'm all over that like a rash.
But they do all have pistols, so you would have to do some cutting and bits and pieces. But I'd say I'd probably use these guys as my Jews.
Okay.
So they're slightly... You'd see that they're different, which would mean that you can then make them obviously different to your normal guys. So these ones you could actually use alongside Games Workshop.
They're quite nice.
Do you see what I mean? They're more new Delaque than old Delaque, but they're metal, so it's you've got less sort of options in regards to gun swaps and arm movements and stuff. But I'd definitely probably go Jews for them.
Yeah, I think that's
and then cool. And then for other things, there's Mad Robot do like a trench coat body. So like the Scutari, if you're wanting to go more for a bit like a big flowing trench coat sort of style, it then allows you to chuck legs on and different arms and bits and pieces, so you've got a bit more flexibility. But that's basically it in regards to possible things that I could find, because the Delaque style is so unique.
The thing I was thinking
was very difficult
of doing, just completely out of the box and showing my green skin roots, is thinking about doing some sort of sneaky stabbing goblin Gretchen gang, and using I've just got visions of them sort of sneaking around and infiltrating and dropping in from here, there, and everywhere, and just being a bit generally sneaky and a bit quiet. They're not gonna stand up to a straight out gunfight, but they'd be quite happy to walk behind you and stab you in the back.
Yeah, I think I like the variety, and I think that was what people wanted to do when they did the squats and stuff.
Yeah.
But the only difficulty is, I think sometimes people get funny when you're playing them, because they're that much shorter.
Oh yeah, definitely.
the way terrain is, it's difficult to target them.
Yeah, but then if you're going to be
So
playing
you'd
in a
kind
group where that's going to be an issue, then you do very scenic bases where there might be like an oil drum and then the grot standing on top of that. And that would be
Yeah.
a similar sort of height to what the real model should be.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Did either of you able to find any sort of other options?
I got as
Because
far
I did
as
find it difficult.
yeah, I got as far as Heresy Miniatures, and then that was as far as I went. And then I saw green and went grot.
my only thought was like the Skitarii, like you touched on earlier, with the long coats.
Yeah, but but Michael's right. It would have to be, if you were going away from Delaque, you'd have to fully go away from it. Like there's no, with some models you can mix and match, but those Delaque are very unique. It's only those slicks that could possibly run alongside Delaque. They're just too standouty. There's no sort of
it's a very distinct look.
So, but I mean, it's fortunate that Delaque models are really nice, so it does make life nice and easy. Okay, that is the conversion corner then. But something that's in the also in the Delaques that's not in the White Dwarf is the Delaque Brute and the Delaque Pet.
Yes.
So we will have a quick break and then we'll go first into the Brute. Alright guys, welcome back. So it's again the showcase for the Delaque Brutes. So Michael is going to go first by reading a couple of paragraphs of the lore.
House Delaque Spiker. Psykers are a precious and perilous resource in Necromunda, heavily controlled by the Imperial House, with unsanctioned psykers or weirds culled and hunted mercilessly. Of the clan houses, Delaque is unique in that it has special dispensation to cultivate its own psychic individuals without the oversight of, or so the story goes. What arrangement allows House Delaque this privilege, or its exact details, remains a closely guarded secret. Even with the blessing of the Imperial House, true-born psykers remain incredibly rare within humanity, and so the Delaque have resorted to other means for their creation. Is the spiker, dosed up with concentrated gas solutions, an individual with a glimmer of psychic potential is subjected to a forced evolution. It is a process that can take months or years to produce results. The prospective spiker, strapped into a Medicaid harness as their body atrophies and their cranium expands. Those who don't suffer catastrophic biological collapse or spontaneous and fatal cerebral expansion are conditioned by House Delaque to serve gang leaders. Utterly insane, a spiker is a psychic sponge, soaking up thoughts for hundreds of meters in all directions. In the hellish confines of a hive, this can mean thousands of minds all babbling in the spiker's ear. When the spiker's gang wish to learn what it has gathered, its mouth valves are opened and the spiker's secrets spill forth in a long, unbroken stream of consciousness.
All right, thank you, Michael. And first we'll go into the model count and the model cost, and the basic stats. So it's the spiker. So it's just basically a psychic spy. I guess that's why they put that name.
Well, they're called a spiker because they're a forced psyker. You basically just loaded them full of like psychic steroids.
Oh, okay.
That's basically what it is, because like everyone has latent psychic ability, because everyone has mental functionings and capacity, but only the minimum select few people in the millions and trillions it manifests in such a way that you can use it. But there's these drugs that basically the gang manufactures, which they just jam into someone who's willing or unwilling, and it just overload stat capacity, and then they become a forced psyker or a spiker.
Okay. I'm just shocked that Tom wasn't listening to me while I was reading those 2 paragraphs.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's almost as if you're recording it separately. So it's 190 credits. It's weapon skill and ballistic skill 6+. They're not great, but it's toughness 4 with 4 wounds, which is pretty hefty. And it has unique weapon. Well, no actual weapons itself, but it does have psychic powers. So I'll start with flight then. So they're always flying, so they ignore terrain. They can move freely between levels without restriction, and they never fall. They cannot ignore impassable terrain. They cannot end their movement overlapping an obstacle or on a fighter's base. So they can't go through a wall in a Zone Mortalis, but they can float between different levels, go up and down, and they don't drop down, so they won't fall into pits or anything like that, which is handy. It gives you a lot more freedom in 3D to just go wherever you like, really. So I'm here, now I'm here. Do you have to finish on a floor?
I think so. Like, I think you have to, end somewhere that you are arguably standing.
So you couldn't float between 2 floors that are really high up with a gap in between. You couldn't be halfway between the 2. You'd have to finish somewhere.
Yeah, you'd finish on like whatever the closest ground level was between the 2, but then in your next move you could just carry on going and go straight up again to the 2nd floor.
But the up and down movement counts as a movement too, doesn't it?
Yes, I think it does. It's all true distance, isn't it? So
otherwise you just rocket up anything at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. So yeah, it does count. Yeah.
Fair enough. I think you just have to come to have a chat with your friend as to whether does it count as diagonal movement, or is it old school? Or you go down 3 inches, then you go across 3 inches, or can you just do 6 inches diagonally downwards sort of thing? But that's for you and your friend to chat to. So that wasn't really a psychic power, that's just something it always has. So the actual psychic powers themselves. So the first one is Psychic Scream. Enemy fighter in 3 inches must immediately take a nerve test at -1. Any fighter who fails immediately breaks and runs for cover. Handy if you're in an assault area. If you're in a really built up bit, I guess you could just, it's like your grenades. Just send the psyker in and let him scream and hopefully send everyone everywhere.
The psychic powers on him are pretty reliable as well, because to perform a psychic power you need to make a willpower test, and his willpower is 4+, and you're taking out on 2 dice.
Okay.
So you've got pretty damn good odds of getting that 4+. So that's good going. Obviously a failure is going to be a double 1, which is going to give you a perils, or rolling a 2 and a 1. So you've only really got 3 chances out of your 36 options to fail that. So psychic power wise is pretty reliable.
That's some quick maths there, Michael.
I did that all myself with a pencil.
We will speak about psychers and bits and pieces probably next month, of like all the sites and how to use them. And I know there's a psychic character as well, so we could discuss that next month too. But we're just going to actually talk about the powers at this second. And Psychic Assault. So nominate an enemy fighter within 18 inches. They must take a willpower check. If passed, the fighter is pinned. If failed, the fighter is pinned and loses a wound. I've got and is pinned again. So that's my writing. If reduced to 0 wounds, roll the injury dice and apply the result.
Yeah.
So it's just a shooting attack, essentially, isn't it?
There'd be no modifiers to hit. So that's significant.
Yeah, essentially.
So you can hit someone who's behind cover and so on without modifiers. There's no range modifiers. good.
So
That's pretty nice.
It sounds obvious being the gang brute, but it seems like this is just their most direct, heavy-hitting form of damage.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think the brute does a ton of stuff that's overly unique or flexible or even really that tactical. It's just that by the standards of their gang, he just hits hard.
So he auto pins someone, and then and if if it's failed, then regardless he gets pinned, and then he either gets pinned or he gets flesh wounded as well as pinned. So it's a good way of knocking someone important on the floor, someone you really want to get thumped. You can knock them down. So that's really helpful.
And such as an opposing brute, perhaps.
Yes. And then, unless you then go, but you've got nerves of steel, and then they roll another willpower. Is it willpower or call for nerves of steel?
I don't think nerves of steel would actually work, because I think that's a test you take when you would be pinned from a ranged attack. I don't know whether or not it actually works here. It might do, it might not. I'll have to look into that. Because it's not a ranged attack, it's a psychic power that just has a result of the end result of the power is it makes the target pinned. Having nerves of steel doesn't help if you're being, telekinetically slammed on the floor.
Well, it depends. If it's my model, it matters. Fair enough. We'll have to work that one out. And then telekinesis force blast. Enemy fighter within 3 inches any enemy fighter within 3 inches is pushed immediately away D3 plus 1 inches. If pushed to an edge, roll initiative test. If failed, they hit the object. If they fail, they fall, or if they hit an object, they take strength the distance that they moved. So it's very similar to Psychic Scream, essentially. I guess you just pick it depending on the army you face.
Well, also the situation.
Or the board you're playing on.
Yeah, if you're surrounded by, if you get charged or whatever, and you're surrounded by a couple of models, and you've managed to survive by virtue of having 4 wounds and a high toughness, then when it's your turn to activate, you can do that force blast and push everyone away.
Or you can float up to some of those higher level gantries and start pushing people off them.
Yes, because that's fun.
That's just me. So, and it doesn't involve, I suppose it involves initiative. Also, I guess it depends on who you're fighting as well, because if you're close to a load of Escher who have a 2-up or 3-up initiative, you probably wouldn't use the one that involves the initiative, and if they have a low willpower, you'd probably just send them off running with panic.
You've got options there, haven't you?
I guess it just depends. Yeah. It just depends. Whereas the Goliaths have quite a high willpower, but a pretty low initiative, so you'd probably try and thump them away a bit rather than trying to panic them. And then some of the gangs the other way around.
And battling some Van Sars would just be sort of like knocking bottles off a wall. Because Van Sars do enjoy having the height advantage, but they do not have the best initiative, so they have trouble staying up high.
Oh, that's a shame. They've got to have a weakness somewhere.
Yeah. It's called gravity.
Yeah. And then they'll have their grav shoots and they're just like, I'll float into the ground. And then their skills. So they've got Savant as a primary and Agility and Cunning as a secondary.
Yeah.
So should we go straight into the conversion part of it?
Before you move on, I think one thing that's interesting to note is the unsanctioned psyker status that the model's got. I think from memory, I can't remember now, but I think that means that if you was to capture that model at the end of the game, then you can try selling it to the guilders. I think you're going to get the full value of the model rather than half. I think that's how it works.
Okay.
And
I think
he's quite pointy, so that would be a lot of money.
I can't remember the exact details. We'll probably mention it next month. But I think being an unsanctioned psyker means that when things go wrong, they tend to go wrong more explosively.
But isn't this one of the sanctioned psykers? Don't the Delaque psykers?
No. Do you think Lord Helmar's been approving them jamming all these drugs into people to force them into being psykers?
Yeah,
people who
he's
are
fine
not
with
trained psykers.
Yeah, there's no issue. There's no proof.
Nothing to
of
see
it
here.
being
Nothing
a problem.
You're right, there is no proof because all the
Exactly.
proof explodes constantly.
Well, exactly. So there's nothing to see. There's just. I heard you're using a psyker. No, there's no psyker. There's a splat on the floor, but there's no psyker. No, you're correct. It is an unsanctioned psyker.
You're very unsanctioned.
So yeah, just web him as much as you can, I guess. Yeah, sweet money. That's a lot of cash.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Michael.
So in that respect, he's going to attract a lot of attention, which you could use to your advantage if you can play it that way, can't you? But you'd have to bear that in mind.
It opens up a lot of opportunities for GMing events in campaigns where, perhaps Helmar or some of the other gangs are coming in to explicitly try and get this brute off you because they're an unsanctioned psyker. So they're going to be drawing a bit of attention from the authorities.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if I could get my one to explode before he gets captured. Just get him to blow up. No, that's a good point. Okay, so conversion corner then. How would we build it? Obviously, because there's no model as yet.
Sort of going from the artwork and stuff that's in the book. You're going to want something that's fairly big and beefy. Bold head is a given, just by virtue of Delaque. I was thinking using something like an orc body to give something that's fairly muscular and that, and then using maybe a part of the Gene Stealer sort of bits, raiding the bits, because they've got like large craniums and heads and stuff. But obviously not wanting the face, you'd have to use a more human face. But just using the general sort of skull from some Gene Stealery type creature. But as for the don't know.
For me, I feel like there's practically a model that already exists that more or less is this description, and it's.
Can I guess what you're going to say?
Go on.
Is it the Blackstone Fortress model?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
Yeah, the new Blackstone Fortress Psykers.
I've seen some cool conversions where they've taken the head off the unsanctioned psyker in that, stuck it on a Delaque body, and then cut the feet off the Delaque body, and then taken the floating feet from the Blackstone Fortress model again, and stuck it bottom. So it's a floating Delaque model
with the big bulbous head.
Psyker head. Yeah, it looks awesome. That's definitely what I'm going for if I build it.
Yeah, I feel like that's almost the natural thing to do, really. Like, it's just so perfect. It even looks pretty much like the artwork.
Maybe that's like,
I'm sure we will eventually get. I'm sure we'll eventually get a model that looks very similar to that concept, and it'll probably be great.
Yeah.
But that almost feels like.
Yeah, no, it's definitely cool. I think attached. I'm tossing between though, where I'm going to use the head and stuff, and I've seen the ones on the Delaque models, and I've seen the image in the book, and it looks like he's wearing a proper, like, normal trench coat. But then I'm not sure whether my unsanctioned psyker would probably have a slightly more raggedy jacket. I'm just not sure whether to just make him a bulbous head.
Yeah, you could just green stuff a big
Delaque
head,
model,
like cone heads.
Yeah, or like you were saying with the Tyrannid, like a Tyrannid shaped model, because they've got slightly bigger heads, and I can just shave the head bone plate that makes it look Tyrannidy, and add a bit of green stuff to make it more bulbous in random areas rather than symmetrical like the Gene Stealer bits are that I'm going to use. but there is a lot of opportunity. And then with the, you can see on the images also where they've got the syringes that are kind of on bionic arms pointed towards the heads. You can use like the Dark Eldar grotesques and what was the other type of Dark Eldar? But they've got lots of vials and syringes and things all on little spindly bionic arms that you could then also attach, which is what I'll also do to my one. I know I've seen one conversion that has a tech priest's sort of one, but I think that might look a bit too thick for such a spindly model. So I'm going to use Dark Eldar syringes, I think, on little bionic arms.
To be fair, there's a new Tech Priest model that's coming out as part of one of the new Kill Team releases. That is like a sort of like a bit of a more bloated, bulbous sort of Tech Priest. But I believe he's also levitating across the floor. And perhaps if you used him, he'd be a good basis for one.
I do remember. He looks like he's. Is he look like he's whispering? Oh no, he's telling someone to shush. It looks like, doesn't it? He's got his finger over his mouth.
And that could be a psychic scream.
Yeah.
Psychic whisper.
Everyone shh. And then there's Forge World have obviously the Renegade Psychers that can be used.
They don't anymore. They took them off the range. The entire Renegade Guard and Psyker range was taken off sale, coincidentally, about 2 months before Blackstone Fortress was announced, which has a load of new plastic Traitor Guard and Rogue Psykers in it.
Fair enough. To be fair, I'm pretty much 100% sure I'm going to use a Blackstone Fortress model anyway, because the conversions that I've seen just look awesome.
Yeah, I think that it just feels like the best option right now, and not just as a placeholder until we get somewhere better. Like, I think it would look amazing.
Like, yeah, I mean, like, I don't even think I'd probably use this model, but I still want to make it. I'm not sure I'd use this one.
It's a perfect model to use in custom scenarios. Use it in one-off games.
Yeah,
it's
drop it in as an
like
NPC.
a mini boss. Yeah.
Yeah, that would definitely be more what I'd use it. But I can't wait to see what they actually make. When they do make them, I'm just looking forward to the Ambots.
You can't see anything past an Ambot.
No, not yet. Not now they're plastic. I want it.
You have it.
Just got to wait for them to come out now. Anything else on the Spiker before we jump into the other pet? Or to the other Delaque model?
No, I think that's it.
No, but it's about everything.
Okay, we'll have a quick break and then we'll get into... someone else is going to pronounce this. Jesus. We'll be back in a minute. Okay guys, welcome back. It's the showcase for the Delaque pet, which I think may be Cephalopod Spectre, but I might be incorrect, so apologies. The first bit of the lore is going to be read by Michael.
Cephalopod Spectre. House Delaque utilises numerous tools to gather secrets and pry knowledge from their surroundings, from scuttling whisper thieves to burrowing data serpents. Among these, the Cephalopod Spectre is perhaps the most sinister and the most effective. Each spectre is a writhing mass of mechanical tentacles and gleaming oculi, its whirring lenses constantly tracking the shadows for movement. Via a complex array of auspices, the spectre drinks in its surroundings and communicates them to its owner, granting them a multispectral view of the battlefield. When roused to action, a spectre can uncoil itself from around its master's neck or legs darting forward through the air on whispering suspensors, its limbs sprouting weapons ready to stun, capture, or exterminate the threat. The obedient nature of each spectre is carefully cultivated by House Delaque, allowing a level of bond between master and machine no mere servo skull or trained beast could match. The secret of this link comes from the fact that each spectre's cogitator is built around a fragment of synaptic tissue, grown from its owner's genetic material. Extracted from a cloned brain, gestated to the edge of adulthood, the fragment is interred into the mechanical cranium of the spectre, and then raised to consciousness by its master. This cognitive bonding also has its drawbacks, however. A spectre may anticipate its master's needs, but it also often shares its hatred and fears, making it act erratically if their owner gives in to rage or panic.
Thank you, Michael. As you know, I haven't heard that, so if I ask a question that Michael's already explained, then I apologise. It is 100 credits. It's got a 4+ weapon skill, 5+ ballistic skill, strength 3 and strength, 3 strength and toughness, and it's 1 wound. It comes with shock tendrils, which have a 2-inch range, so they're versatile. Strength 1, melee and shock. So strength +1, beg pardon. So it's a strength 4. It's got flight like the spiker. It's got sensor array. So if you're within 3 inches of the owner, who has to take an intelligence test, roll an extra d6 and choose one to discard.
Yeah.
So I guess it's like a little robot talking to his boss, going, "Don't press that button."
It's handy for
not that one either.
And things like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just making them more likely to be able to pass any sort of door opening or control thingy. So it's just like a little bot floating around telling him what to do, or her. And then it's got threat response as well. So if the owner is taken out of action, before the spectre is removed, all enemy models within D6 suffer a strength 1 auto hit with the seismic trait. So you've just taken the boss out and it kind of self-destructs itself a little bit.
It's riot suppression. It's like,
yeah. What does seismic do again?
Pass.
I can't remember. And I was going to say the rules for concussion, but that's not what it is. I think it's something to do with potentially being knocked over and reduced movement, but don't quote me on that.
So, if the target of a seismic attack is active, they are pinned, even if they have the ability that would normally avoid them being pinned from range attacks. So this one is one that actually you can't get Nerves of Steel from. So I'm thinking you probably could Nerves of Steel the other one, because it doesn't say you can't, whereas this one
but my point with the other one is the other one's not a ranged attack, the other one's a psychic power.
But nor's this, really. It just says any models within D6 suffer an auto hit.
Well, I don't know, we'll have to look at it. But
yeah,
in either case, basically this has the chance to knock a load of people over when your owner gets taken out.
Yeah, and in addition, if a wound is rolled with the seismic, it's a natural 6, no save can be taken. So it just does like an EMP sort of body smacking attack, and just has the potential to pin everybody within a range, so that's handy. And Watchdog. Owner can attempt to spot attackers out of the vision arc. +1 to D6 to see if a fighter has been spotted. So it's essentially really a sensor skull.
But it's literally a bit like the Cyber Mastiff for House Orlock in that regard. And that is a really underrated skill, because it's surprising how much of a difference that makes to being aware and of being snuck up on.
It's quite funny though that they've got the perfect thing to detect against themselves, because they're the ones that want to be doing all the sneaky stuff, and they've got their little watchdog to counteract that.
Yeah, it's handy. They've decided to own it themselves, so no one else can use it against them.
I actually really like this pet because this essentially is the Swiss Army knife. It's the toolbox to actually do whatever the scenario needs to be doing. Like, if you've got a leader or a champion who has one of these, and you're playing any kind of scenario that has anything that needs to be done beyond just killing the enemy gangers, they are the one who is going to be going off and fixing the thing, opening the door, triggering the alarms, whatever whatever the extra thing is in the scenario. They're your man, and they are so much better at it because of this pet.
Yeah, it's definitely a utility piece, isn't it? To, like you say, for those particular missions or those times when you need it. They're very fragile, but when you need them,
serious utility.
And they're only going to be small as well as a model. They're not going to be big, so they should be fairly easy to hide out of sight and still do their job.
I imagine these being a bit like a lot of the little robots and droids from the Star Wars universe. That sort of style of companion.
Yeah.
Or like Thingy from Borderlands.
Claptrap.
Yeah. Just like a irritating claptrap. No, don't press that button. No, don't press that button.
His entire purpose for existing is to open doors.
That's it.
And open.
You'd end up just shooting it in the head, wouldn't you? Even if it's
stairs. Nobody said anything about stairs.
You're bringing back my PTSD.
Love Claptrap.
Yeah. We've really basically, it's just like a cool sort of, essentially it's a cybermassive servo sensor skull that hits people at the end if you manage to take the owner out of action.
Like, I think it's really easy to underestimate this when you're looking at taking one because it doesn't do much in the way of damage or survivability for its owner. Like, it doesn't, which is what typically all the other pets do. They do damage to the enemy or they tend to protect the owner a bit. This one, it's just, it does so much more for the owner, but it's all your scenario based stuff, but it really does make a big difference and I really like it.
Awesome. It's got the Tony seal of approval.
Tony's tactical seal.
There's nothing more annoying than when you fail a critical objective because your gangers or your champions are failing intelligence checks and they can't work out how to open the loot crate or turn off the generator or free the captive, whatever it is. You've gone through all this other effort with your battle plan to get to where they are to just fail the scenario check.
Yeah. It'd be invaluable.
It's like when you...
What's the run the gauntlet mission using those tiles? Okay, the tiles aren't currently in the rulebook and whatever else. But if you're still playing those, the mission where you've got to open the vault at the end, it's like a super Uber door that you've got to try and open, and it's pretty tricky. It's quite a high number you've got to roll for your intelligence test to get through, but that should certainly help you, that little gadget.
It reminds me of like the Crystal Maze where they run into a room and they go, I don't know what to do, and then there's a sign on there saying press red button, and they'd just spend 30 seconds trying to work out what to do, whereas if you had this robot it'd just be like press the damn red button. And that's essentially what the intelligence test is. It's just the robot telling you to press the obvious thing that says push to open.
Maybe.
They're too busy dodging bullets to worry about what button to press correctly. Okay, so a good pet. So next up then is conversions. So if we want to make it before we get a release, where could we get it from? So I've found 3 possibles. Should I go first, or does anyone else want to? I
can go with a couple beforehand because they're definitely not the same as what you've chosen already. If I was making them, I'd probably be just raiding my Orc bits box and just getting loads of mechanically little bits and pieces and mashing it all together. and just make something that looks like it's a floating machine. Obviously, totally vague.
Mhm.
If I was going to buy something ready-made, then there's a couple of models from the Malifaux range, from the Arcanist faction, with sort of mechanical attendants and little robot-y type things. You might not get the sense of it floating because they are on sort of spindly legs, but at least it is that type of thing. It's got lots of little arms and little tools and stuff. So I can post some pictures of that when we go live.
Yeah, when I get the podcast out. Yeah.
So that's what I'd probably be aiming for, and the fact that I've got those things, so I don't have to go and buy one.
Cool. That's always helpful. What about you, Tony?
I'd basically be doing a similar thing. I think this actually has a lot of free reign, and I think generally anything in the range of just a super souped up servo skull would work. Anything that's just lots of extra little mechanical arms and tendrils and digibits and needlers and whatever, just sort of poking out of a big hovering skull or servitor or whatever, I think would work brilliantly for this. I actually think that that same kill team Mechanicum guy I mentioned earlier would actually be really cool for this. If you essentially took like the head off him and made him look less organic and really emphasized the bionic parts of him and just have him as a big floating mechanical droid that follows its owner around.
Well, it's funny you're talking about it because I decided I'm a bit bored of painting after finally completing the Zerka. So I've just got I had some little miniature goat skulls, and I found a little plastic jar that was supposed to be for my vape thing, and I'm going to have a floating servo skull in a jar. That's going to be my one. And I'm going to have bits of drop pod. I've got all these different bits here, and I think I'm going to make something along those lines.
Sounds interesting.
So it can either be used as this, or I'm going to use it as a psycho, like a random psycho model, something that people are going to, like you were saying before about objective thingies. And it can also be attached to my Inquisitor retinue sort of thing when you finally get a codex. I might even pay 40k again then. But yeah, but in regards to things that are actually available, there's a company called Brother Vinny, which they've had to take some of their stuff down because it looks very, very similar to certain things that already have ownership. So, like, this one looks incredibly similar to the Fallout. So I'm going to attach a link to the comments when I post the group. But essentially, it's the thing from Fallout, like the floating screen with the 4 prongs that come out the back.
Oh, the iBot.
Yes. So they basically made an incredibly similar thing to that. So I thought that would be something that kind of fits that description.
I'll get one and call it Eddie. Eddie.
They used to have, which is what I would have preferred, the dock robot, the round one with the 3 eyes and the tendrils and stuff. Now I would have thought that would have been cool, but that was one of the things.
Mr. Handies.
Yeah, which I thought would have been awesome, but that was one of the things they were told to take down. But obviously, Fallout Hobbies do actually have their own game now, so those things are available there, which is probably why they had to take it down. There's a company called Armorcast, which have made like a claptrap miniature. So there you go, Tony. You've got your own claptrap miniature bot there to be used. So that's really cool. And again, I'll post that link up.
Hello, Wargamers.
Hello, gang. Tell me what you want me to do today. And then there's a company called Wargame Exclusive, which make the Castellan robot alternative heads, which are kind of like 3 bionic eyes and on a head, and they normally slot into where the helmet part of the Castellan robots is, which people don't like. You know, that cone shape with the flat screen. But if you took one of those heads, and I've got my green stuff cable maker, I could quite easily make one of those into a floating bot. So that's another possibility that I thought. And then I've seen one that was converted up recently using Necron and Tau parts and Imperial parts.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, just any Tau drone would be a good basis.
Yeah, and just hang bits off of it.
Yeah, and then I saw that's basically what this one was, which was just Necron, Tau and Imperial parts all just stuck together to make this concoction, which is perfect for Necromundas, because I'm guessing that they'll just get lots of random bits of technology and jam it all together to get it to work. But essentially that's it for the pet. So these links will all be up once the podcast's out. I'll put all the links onto the comments, so it will make sense when you're listening, that if you're listening, you could just open up your phone, find the post, and in the comments I'll separate them all off into the different bits like I did last episode. So there'll be one for the pets with all the options, and so it makes a bit more sense when we're talking about it. Okay guys, that's it for the showcases. We've got some games played. I know Michael's had some games played, so you won't have to listen to my voice for a little while. So we're going to go into games played. Okay guys, welcome back. We're at Games Played, and it's Michael who's played the game.
Despite Tom's best efforts at scheduling the podcast to such a date that it's the day before I get to play, luckily his laptop decided to die, so after a week I've managed to get a game in. So I had my mate come round with his boy, and I set up a table for 3D terrain. I was really tired, and I thought, oh, I'm just going to play on the 2D because it'll be easy. And then I got up, looked at the table, and I thought, I really should make the effort, since I haven't played for a couple of months. So I raided the garage, threw a load of terrain down, and then we had a blast. What we ended up doing was playing a 3-way game. So I used my Gene Stealer Colt. His boy was using a Cawdor gang, and he was using an Escher gang. It's only got 1,000 point starting gangs, just as a one-off game. And the mission was Gang Moot, is it? I think, where you've got all 3 leaders are jammed in the middle. They've got to start within 6 inches of the centre, and they're out on their own. And then all the other models are kind of scattered around the table. You take it in turns deploying.
Running into help out.
You take it in turns deploying, but you've got to put your model more than 12 from your leader, and not within 6 inches of another model. So by the time everyone's gone round the circle putting all their models down, you've got models scattered all over the board. And then the way they activate, the scenario is basically meant to represent the leaders of the gangs getting together for a little parlay and a bit of a conflab for something. So the other gangers are just milling about, not paying a lot of attention. So they only get to activate properly when someone pulls a gun out and starts making a racket. So until one of your leaders sort of pulls a gun, then no one else is sort of taking part. But my mate, just to try and speed things up a little bit, he got the first activation and then instantly took a shot at my Gene Stealer Magus and put him down on his back, which was a little bit disappointing. But then it started the ripple effect. It started the ripple effect of different models from different gangs activating, and it was quite fun to see how like 1/4 of the table came alive, and then they used their ability to move and do stuff and to shoot to try and then get the rest of the gangers on the table to wake up. So it was quite interesting. I ended up losing that game horrifically. I think both the other gangs they kind of ganged up on the Xenos, which I thought was a little bit little bit unfair, but it was still good fun. His boy, he hadn't played for probably for maybe 8 or 9 years, so it was just like a refresher learning game pretty much for all of us. But it had a good crack. It was good fun. There was a couple of little moments. One of his boys, gangers, had a frag trap, which was one of the tactics cards that got drawn. My acolyte with his chainsaw, buzzsaw type thing, he charged into combat with him, sliced and diced him, and then the frag trap thing, when the model dies, if it hasn't been deployed already, you roll d6. On a 1, it explodes. And lo and behold, he rolled a 1, and then we all laughed, and then he instantly killed my acolyte. So it was like proper payback.
Awesome.
So that was quite funny. But it was nice to be rolling some dice. And then hopefully tomorrow, as we record this, I've got another game organised. So that's all good fun.
And you were the host, and they didn't even.
No, they didn't even let me win.
Be
I
gentle.
gave them beer and food and everything, and they still didn't take the hint. So I'm gonna go around there and set fire to their carpet. It'll be fine.
Yeah, that sounds fair. That's how gang wars start. And have you got to play it, Tony, or?
No, I've not had a chance to play a game.
So.
Hopefully, this weekend I'm kicking. There's going to be a 40k campaign kicking off that I'm going to be part of, so that'll be fun to look forward to. But I haven't had a chance to play any Necromunda for a little while, because again, my sort of local play group's all a bit more 40k focused at the moment. So I imagine that next time I get a proper game of Necromunda in, it might actually possibly be against you at some point in the near future.
Nice.
So I do look forward to that.
Yeah, no, it'd be good to actually meet you face to face.
Get your win ratio up as well, Tony.
You'll
get your win ratio up as well.
No. Tom will get to see some board control in action.
I'm going to get board controlled off the board.
Tom.
My tactic is running in with my Goliath and trying to hit you around the head with a renderizer. That's as far as it goes.
Sound plan.
Yeah. Okay, guys. The game's played. We've actually got a segment now from a listener, a guy called Tom Fern. I'm not sure people who've listened in the past. I've spoken about the fact I did a podcast with Tom called Dawn of the Rebellion, and I will post that link up on this group as well in the past. But he does book reviews, and he's done a book review for the newest Rulebook and Gangs of the Underhive books, which will go in here. So thank you, Tom. Like I say, Dawn of Rebellion is the podcast. I'm pretty sure it's YouTube, so have a hunt for it. But I will put the link in the show notes, like the Facebook thing for this episode as well. But we're going to stop here for a sec, and then we'll be back after the review.
It's taken about a year to get to this point, but we finally have a fully functioning Necromunda game with all the gangs, all the items, and a proper campaign system in place. It's a bit of a shame it's taken us this long to get to this point, but the past is the past, and we can now move forward with the game. So the end of 2018 saw the release of what are essentially a pair of compendiums for Necromunda, 2 books that bring together all of the disparate bits and pieces from the soft rule book, from the core game, and the 4 gang war books. The first is called The Rulebook and contains, as one might expect, the complete rule set for the game, and the other is Gangs of the Underhive, which is essentially a codex for all the gangs and hanger-on models and whatnot. Both books are hardback for a change. They are really nice books, actually. They've got a sort of good weight to them. The paired together aren't overly tedious. It's not going to put your back out lugging them around. The main rulebook comes in at 197 pages and includes everything you need to do to run a game, including a detailed and expanded campaign system, as well as the complete set of rules that have been updated with the latest erratas and FAQs. There's also a really good level of reorganisation taking place, so the rulebook flows and all the various charts and tables now makes sense. They had addressed some of these in Gang War 3 and Gang War 4, but they've gone through and the whole book looks polished and refined. And especially when you compare it back to the soft cover rulebook, it's a much better product. And again, you kind of wonder, why couldn't they have done this first time round? The Gangs of the Underhive book is slightly thinner, coming in at 164 pages, and it covers all 6 of the House gangs, including the new House Delaque rules, which I'll talk about at the end of this segment, as well as a full and complete trading post, exotic beasts, hangers-on, and bounty hunters, and all sorts of really cool stuff. Each gang has a nice set of lore and all of the relevant rules for their fighters and starting armories in a tidy segment of 5 or 6 pages, usually with a bit of artwork showing a ganger, some sketches of their starter armory weapons. So yeah, it's good having them all in one place, so you're not flicking about too much. One notable absence, though, is the 3 lists that were put out in the various White Dwarfs last year. So the customizable Venator gang, which I know has been really popular, which essentially allows you to choose from profiles that are sort of pre-generated and develop your own bounty hunters gang. They're not in the book, and neither are the Gene Stealer cults, and neither are the Chaos Cultist lists. I'm not really sure why that is. It might be that they're not as balanced as the others. You can't make the case that they don't make models for them, because the whole point of the Venator list is to allow you to convert, and they do make models for the Gene Stealer cults and Chaos Cultists, so I'm not really sure what happened there. They are available as PDF downloads from the Forge World website, but yeah, I'm a bit surprised that they didn't put them into the Gang War book. The books themselves aren't particularly cheap. The rulebook comes in at £35 and the Gangs book at £30 if you buy them from Games Workshop. On launch, there was a limited supply of slipcases available. If you wanted to buy the books together in the slipcase, it was £65. So that was nice not to charge you extra for that bit of cardboard wrapping. To be honest, it's a bit of a hard pill to swallow. If you've been in the game from the start, you will have bought probably most of the Gang War books and the core rulebook coming from the box set, which in and of itself is well over £60 just on the supplements. And these books are now not totally obsolete. They have brought out an FAQ and errata, so you can, if you have time and inclination, cut out all the bits that need fixing and make a little folder with all the FAQ stuff in it. But really, they're not obsolete, but they are certainly now out of date, and you are going to want to have these rule books. They are the definitive version of the game, and if you haven't got them, you're making life hard for yourself. You can get them for less from third-party stores. I got mine from Alchemist Workshops, which does take the edge off a bit, and if you're particularly frugal, you don't need the rule book yourself. If you're part of a club and there's several people going, as long as there is a rule book and you are already familiar with the rules, you probably don't need the new one. As long as somebody's got one, it's not too bad. You will need the new gang book, so you can justify £30 as opposed to 65, or I think it's 23.50 from a lot of third-party places. If you're like me, I've got all the Gang War books, and to then have to shell out another £50 to keep playing the game. And there are changes, but they are minor changes. I don't know, maybe I'm just moaning. This is the hobby. So yeah, getting into the game now is reasonably straightforward. If I was to encourage a new player, I'd say, well, buy the Gangs of the Underhive book, have a read, pick a gang you like the look of, buy that box, get their dice and tactic cards, and that's pretty much you good to go. You can make good lists out of the box. Get 1,500 points out of them quite easily, and you'll be up and running in no time. That's still a reasonable outlay. It's probably, if you buy it all from Games Workshop, it's probably somewhere in the region of about £75. But actually, that's not too bad, all things considered. It's probably it's a bit cheaper than Lord of the Rings. You can need a couple of boxes and a couple of character packs for that. That's not £25, but Lord of the Rings is still pretty reasonable. And then you look at the likes of 40k, where you're talking probably £100 before you bought any books, or 30k, where you're probably talking £150 before you bought any books. It's not too bad an ask. So as to the books themselves, the rulebook is divided into the following sections. There's a really nice introduction to the game. It's 35 pages long, and it's all sort of stage setting lore, including a really interesting timeline of the planet of Necromunda itself that starts at the Dark Age of technology, moves through the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy to various other bits and pieces, key moments leading up to the present day of the 40k universe, so the 41st millennium. It's a really nice development on the lore, which was kind of scattershot throughout the Gang War books and the softcover rulebook. And there's some nice things I wasn't aware of that kind of really add to the player's understanding of the setting. I missed Necromunda the first time round, so I would imagine a lot of this stuff has just been plucked out of the older books, and veteran players won't get quite so much out of it. But for instance, I had no idea how House, I'm going to butcher this name, Helmer, the guys in charge, came to prominence, and how all the other gangs kind of became established as a result. Well, that's in there now, so I've read it and I understand it. After that, we have a section on kind of the general principles, which outlines the kind of character profile, stat lines, and all that kind of stuff. And then there's the obligatory rules section, and a new section on psychers, which is a development on the rather brief ones found in Gang War 4. Psychers in Necromunda still feels like it's going to be a minor thing, which is good. This isn't a game about psychers, this is a game about gangsters, but it does feel a bit more thought out. You cast powers on a successful cool check. You can disrupt these if you have a psycho on your team, but if you roll Snake Eyes, so double one, bad stuff will happen, including but not limited to tears in reality and demonic possession. I don't think there will be that many psychers outside of Chaos Cultist lists running about on the battlefield, but they do add a bit of flavour to the narrative when you come across one. And I think if you're being the arbitrator in a campaign, having psychers on the board as a custom scenario, so there's a murder cyborg scenario where there is a murder cyborg on the board and that has a particular objective, you could easily sub him out and put the psyker in and make for a very interesting game. After the psychers, we have what I think is probably the best bit of the rulebook, and it's the Dominions campaign section, which is lifted out of Gang War 4. Now, Necromunda is built to be run as a campaign, and the Dominion system is kind of the ultimate expression of that. This version of the campaign allows you to contest like actual territory that grants you buffs and bonuses, rather than just sort of the faceless turf that was described in Gang War 1. So you can get refineries and drinking dens and gambling dens and fighting pits and all sorts of really cool. There's a huge raft of these things that you can fight over. And having something tangible to fight over gives the campaign games a bit more meaning and flavour. You play the role as this gang leader, but you're now actually making executive decisions. It's not just I'm going to sack off that bit of turf. It's I really don't want to lose my gambling den, so I'm going to make sure I defend it at all costs, or I'm not going to waste resources on that. It doesn't, the buffs aren't really helpful for me, so yeah, I'll let that one go. Or if you're being strategic, I really need that asset, or the tunnels or the refinery or whatever it might be, so that's what I'm going to attack this week. And if necessary, I will trade a bit of turf in order for some assistance from another gang. It's exciting. It allows players to make a meaningful relationships with one another, so truces and deals of mutual support or whatever. And then of course also it makes it all that much worse when they inevitably betray you. So after the territory section, there's the skirmish game rules for one-off games, which are fundamentally the same, but there's some different setup and winning objective criteria. There's a bit on the battlefield setup and the 6 main skirmish scenarios. And then there is a final section, which is the arbitrator's tools, which is kind of like the GM bit of sort of RPG games, where you have some extra scenarios, rules for a watchman guild, which is a nice touch. It's basically a kind of one-off hive police gang that the arbitrator can put together at whatever points value they like, and they can be thrown against players who need an easy win or who really need a beating. If they're running away with the campaign, well, you send in the Watchman Guild that is tooled up to the nines, and you put a few of them in the ground to kind of level the playing field. But one of the most interesting additions to the game, and certainly in the Arbitrator's tools, is the addition of something called House Subplots. Now, this is new. This isn't something that we've seen in other campaign books. They were discussed on the Warhammer TV Twitch stream when they announced that they were going to be releasing these books. And the designers wanted players to have more than just the obvious objective at hand. People have their own agendas, people have their own sort of secret things that they want to try and accomplish, and gangs are no different. Yes, they might want to steal all the crates, but they will also have other things in mind going into those particular encounters. So that's kind of what the house subplots are for. And how they work is you take a standard deck of cards, or if you're very lucky, like I am, you have John Blanche Dark Millennium playing cards. During the pre-game phase, each player shuffles the deck, draws one card, and then applies the corresponding subplot to their gang. And this becomes a side quest or secondary objective for them to complete. They remain secret until the end of the game, and if completed, provide you with anything from kind of credits to extra tactic cards, reinforcement stuff, equipment, whatever. So I've got a deck here, my Dark Millennium cards, and if I draw this one, which is the King of Chaos, which translates as Chemical Solutions. The gang has been hitting the chems a bit hard, making them less likely to feel injuries, but also more reckless. Reveal this card the first time one of your fighters suffers a flesh wound. For the duration of the game, your fighters ignore the effects of flesh wounds. However, when rolling on the lasting injuries table, they must roll twice and accept the higher result. At the end of the game, every fighter in the crew that is still alive gains an additional D3 experience points. So that's quite cool. That makes you harder to kill, but if you do go down and out, you are at much greater risk of having a really bad time at the docks and potentially costing you quite a lot of money. But if you can end the game alive, getting an extra D3 experience points is nothing to be sniffed at either. So yeah, they're really, really cool. If I draw another one, shuffle the deck, I take that one, is the Ace of Mechanicus, which is Spud Wrenching. Attacks against machinery are a quick way for a house to hurt rivals, and many of the ancient technologies of Necromunda are completely irreplaceable. A fighter in your opponent's deployment zone may make the Spud Wrenching, which is a double action. Reveal this card the first time one of your fighters makes this action. Each time this action is successfully made, make a note. If one of your fighters can complete 3 spud-wrenching actions in a row, they have destroyed something vital to the opposing house, and your gang gains D3 plus 1 reputation. So if you can blitz a guy over to their side of things for 3 turns, where they make this double action, you can gain some extra reputation. Reputation is cool because it allows you to have hangers-on and bounty hunters and stuff like that. And it's quite cool, the idea of a guy just standing there with a massive wrench, just battering something that's thousands of years old, trying to break it. So yeah, that's really cool. And then at the end of the rulebook, there are some usual quick reference bits which you can photocopy. And yeah, that's it. So it's a complete package of a rulebook. It's really nice, really well put together. Definitely worth your time and money if you've got the funds available. The Gangs of the Underhive book is equally well put together, with some brilliantly creepy artwork, a few nice full colour photos. They've got some gang shots at the back, and crucially, it's a well thought through layout. The 6 house gangs are all present, and their rules have been updated according to the erratas and FAQs that were released over the course of 2018. Escher is my main gang, so I've had a good look through, and I can see that, for instance, they've addressed the Last Gun profile issue, where it had like 3 different profiles across 4 different books or something silly like that. So we now have a definitive Last Gun profile. They've also fixed, well, I say fixed, they've addressed some of the hefty amounts of sodium and tears that were thrown at the toxin special rule. So it's still harsh, but not quite as harsh as it used to be. Before this update, it was, so if you caused a wound with a weapon that had toxin, as the attacker you would roll 2d6, and the defender would roll 1d6 and add their toughness. If you as the attacker could equal 2, then they went down, but if you beat their score, they were dead. Just gone. So it could be really, really brutal. And there were a number of times where I would shoot my needle rifle or my champion with a needle pistol and hit their champion with, ramped up toughness 5, 3 wounds. You roll reasonably well, they roll a 2, and their 280 point character's just gone, just dead. And that could be incredibly frustrating for the opposition. So they have addressed it. Now what happens is that if you cause a wound, the attacker rolls a d6 and just has to beat the target's toughness, which makes it, it's still very doable. You're still wasting most gangers on a 4+, Goliaths on a 5, but there's no fault on the part of the defender rolling badly. There's no ownership of that on their behalf. So they're still brutal, but it's slightly less brutal and slightly less random. That said, it also gives greater emphasis and greater need to use things like the Escher Tactic card and being a bit more generous with your firepower, not specifically for toxin weapons, but to just get flesh wounds on people so that their toughness drops, so that when you get in with your toxin, you're not rolling 4s to kill them, you're rolling 3s or 2s. I'm sure that the rest of the gangs have had relevant tweaks, but since I don't play them, I haven't looked too closely. In addition to the house gangs, there are a load of other things included. We have all of the hired guns, which includes the bounty hunters and hive scum. There's brutes, all the various hangers-on, and a section for the exotic beasts. Having these gathered together is good. It was a pain in the arse flicking through 4 gang war books, especially if you're using a pet from this book and a ganger from that book, and it was just a faff. So they're all there in a nice section. There are a lot of entries that don't have models yet, so I would imagine that looking through this list we have a pretty good idea of the release schedule in the near future. Bounty hunter characters like, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Bertram Arturus, who is some Gilder Toff type guy, Ortram 88, who is a kind of weird psyker, and then there's the the various creatures like the Escher Firecat, which we haven't seen yet, the Ambot, which was announced at the New Year's preview event for Necromunda. They look really, really cool. I think there's probably a dozen or so models in there that have rules profiles but no models yet. So I think that that'll probably take us up till the summer, when I'd imagine we'll see some sort of expansion. So going maybe out of the Underhive, or we've speculated about this on an earlier episode. So after we have all the stat line units done, we then have a fully comprehensive trading post with non-conflicting prices and weapon profiles, which is great. Supposedly all the weapons in the Imperium can be found in the trading post, but I haven't seen autocannons, so that's not 100% true. There's also sections for all the armor types. There's a section for bionics, weapon attachments, equipment, and having them all in one place with the gangs means that list building is super easy. You only need to take one book with you if you want to write a list, and that's great. So yeah, all in all, it's a very, very nice book. It's a very good book, and it's a shame we couldn't have had it this time last year when the game was first released, but there we are.
Okay, guys, that was the review. Thank you, Tom. Please be aware that Michael and Tony haven't heard it yet, so it'll be like my situation with Michael saying the law. They've not currently heard it, but I have, and I know that I enjoyed it. So thank you, Tom, and hopefully everyone else will.
I look forward to listening. I look forward to listening to it.
Tony will get to hear it first, apart from me, because he's the one who's editing it. So he'll get to have a listen. Before we get to the thank yous, because we are nearly done now, I just want to discuss, been discussing it a few times on Facebook, and I've spoken to a couple of guys. We've started a Patreon for this podcast. It's something that I've not done before with anything, so it was a bit unnatural to set it up. But it's set up mainly to cover some of the costs. Like I've said, it's only really kicked in from my laptop exploding. My fan exploding last week and my computer melting down. But essentially, it's just a sort of one-off sort of monthly payment thing that's just set at $2. There's no pay scales, there's no tiers. It's going to essentially be for anyone who does want to contribute. There's no pressure. It's not going to release anything exclusive or do anything like that. What will happen is if you do contribute, if you are able to make a donation, then we will thank you in the preceding episode for the support. And what we're looking for is, at the moment, I've been funding the hosting of each release myself. So the first contributions will kind of go towards that, but then after that, it'll be about increasing the amount of data space that we have, because at the moment we can literally only release one podcast per month because there's just not enough bandwidth space for me to save anything else. So that will be where we're looking to go next. And also I'm going to things like the Yak Tribe event, which is a website dedicated to Necromunda. It has really cool tools, and they're doing an event that I'd like to do recording for, which is going to be content for the podcast and stuff. But it's difficult with my 2 children and work and stuff to be able to afford like tickets and bits and pieces. But again, like I say, it's entirely up to you guys. I don't pay for a patron myself for any other podcast, and I don't expect any of you guys do too. But some of you said that you would be happy to contribute, so I've set it up. There's no pressure. It's entirely up to you guys. We will literally only mention it once per podcast. I won't mention it more than once. So each podcast, I'll mention we have it, and I'll mention that there's a link. And if anyone wants to, they can, but I won't keep coming back to it. It's not going to be something that keeps getting mentioned. But yeah, that's essentially it.
I think it's fair.
Do you guys want to say anything?
People are so used to having things like podcasts and YouTube content available for free, and that's kind of accepted. But people have got to realise that there is a cost to stuff. You personally have been paying for the podcast to be available online. So I don't see personally that you should feel guilty about holding your hand out. So if people want to put something in their hand, then that is entirely their choice. They don't have to. They can scream and shout over it if they want. But if you don't want to pay, don't pay. If you feel that Tom justifies having that couple of dollars to offset the cost of producing the show, then go for it.
Yeah, and like I say, it's not. I'm going to be completely honest if once we've worked out what it's going to be, or if anyone is going to contribute, I'll always be open with what each of those bits of funding is going towards. So if it allows me to release another expansion to the amount of space, that's what it will be. If it then allows me to do something else, I'll post it on the podcast. So I'll always be, everything that ever gets donated will be towards paying for or improving the current podcast.
Yeah, potentially we could even use that for prizes and stuff if we wanted to run any competitions, and not necessarily be affiliated with someone because they've donated something. Obviously, all donations are gratefully received. So it's just more options, isn't it?
Yeah, because we've got the Redbubble account, so it might mean that we can buy some Chronicles stuff ourselves using that to then give away in a competition. Or if I've got a group of people who've been regularly contributing for 6 months or 12 months or whatever we do, it might be that we decide that we've got some money to give to people for a possible thank you sort of present and stuff like that. So just little things. But like I say, I'll always be transparent with what we got and what we're going to use it for. But that's essentially the longest I'm ever going to talk about the fact that we've got one. So yeah, it's there if you guys want to contribute, and if you don't, please just carry on enjoying the podcast. If you do enjoy it, if you're not enjoying it, I don't know why you're still listening. But we're at the very last section now, guys. So we're at the thank yous. So we'll have a quick break and we'll be back. Okay, guys, we're up to the thank yous. So before anyone else starts, I just want to say thank you again to Tom for his contribution. If you guys want to contribute or have any ideas of what you could do or anything that you think might be cool, just message me. You can either, probably easier to email me, Chronicles from the Underhive @gmail.com. Just give me an email. I know, again, this is something that I would like to do. A guy emailed me who was running the Nova Open Necromunda tournament last year, and unfortunately I've just not got the time or the storage space to have been able to do that interview. But there will be people who want to reach out and do those sorts of things. So please email me, and we can look at maybe getting people to contribute and help out. So yeah, Chronicles from the Underhive @gmail.com. But again, thank you, Tom. Okay, so now cool stuff we've seen. So I know Michael wants to go first.
There's a couple of things I was
Necromunda stuff, not just cool things. I saw a car yesterday; it was wicked. Sorry.
There's a couple of things off the Facebook groups and stuff I've seen. Guy called Stephen Uden. He's done some conversions on some Caldor models or a gang, and they've all got pumpkin heads, and I just think that's awesome. I think
that's not what I've picked him for, but that's handy.
Star player. He's got two nominations.
Popular guy, yeah.
Yeah, he's essentially sort of modelling them, and he's got. I can't quite tell whether he's got third-party heads, the pumpkins that he's found, or whether he's actually green stuffed them. But I just think it's a brilliant idea. We like a bit of Halloween in our household, so Halloween is 365 days a year here. So that's very good. Raised a smile. The fact he's got a whole gang of them just makes the visual effect really quite striking. The other thing that I thought I'm definitely going to be stealing, even if I'm not purchasing it, I'm going to make it. A guy called Ben Kelly, this was on Necromunda Worldwide, he posted up a picture of a tin can sort of gondola, cable car type affair. And it's some little model kit where you basically get a tin can of like a drinks can, beer can, whatever. And it's got some MDF bits and pieces in it, and you clip it on and it makes it into like a cable car that goes along a wire. And I think, well, that's just such.
Yes, I do. I
think that's just such a brilliant idea. It wasn't particularly expensive to buy as a kit, like from Amazon or something. But I'm thinking I could do exactly the same thing with all of these GW containers and stuff that I've got for my dockyard sort of table, where I've got my crane and loads of containers everywhere. So I just need to make a couple of tall buildings or gantries, string a couple of cables across, and then I'll be suspending some containers and whizzing them backwards and forwards. So inspirational, I think that was. So
yes, it was very cool.
So they're the two things that I spotted this month that I'm going to be acting on.
Okay, awesome. So Tony, did you have anything?
Although I imagine one of the ones I'm going to mention is probably one that has been popular with you as well.
Oh, boo. Can't steal mine.
Is it by any chance a certain Goliath Brute by a Stephen Uden?
Possibly.
Yeah. Well, it's brilliant, isn't it? It's such a good and well executed conversion, built up from amazingly an actual Goliath's waist and legs all the way up into a Dark Eldar grotesque torso. But amazingly, I'm impressed that the proportions don't look cartoonishly ridiculous. It does just look like a really roided out top heavy guy, but in that way that you would imagine a sort of villainous big roided out bad guy would look.
Yeah, that just skipped leg day a little bit, but
bit.
Yeah. But he's definitely still in you're right, he is still somehow in proportion. Does look very cool.
Yeah, I think it's just very well executed and definitely worth mentioning. If you've not seen it in the Necromunda group, you should go check it out because it's brilliant.
No, definitely.
And then the other one that really caught my eye in sort of like the last month was it was actually a bit of scenery that was put together by John Silver, I want to say, but it's like the big not helipad, but like the big like circular platform sort of dais that's built out of, I think it's an old like copper spool even or something, but like a big sort of like wooden wheel almost.
Yes, yeah, I do remember seeing that.
But it's been done so well. Like it looks like something you would find in the Underhive. The colouring, the paint scheme, and even just like the stylings of it. It looks like a really good centerpiece for a 3D board.
No, I do remember now. It did just click in. I think he was a new person, new member of the group as well. I think that was the first thing he posted up.
Well, that was a very good first post, and I look forward to seeing some more stuff from him. Perhaps we finally got someone to compete with Trevor for mentions.
Oh, I don't know. Steve's done pretty well with 2 so far.
But yeah, they're the 2 main ones from me.
Okay, cool. So I have, Steve was one of mine with his Goliath Circa. So Steve Wooden, sorry if I've pronounced it incorrectly. Then I've got Steve Bryce, which I discussed last week with those muties. He's done one recently that's got the one sort of Cyclops eye, and he's got lots of the skin that looks like it's cracking. It's all using the Nurgle champion miniatures, like the big ones, big fat bellies and ripping skin and stuff. But I got his Instagram account wrong last time. It's actually Hobby Dad, his Instagram account, so you can follow him on there too. But they're really cool models. I really love all of them. Then I've got John Wyatt, who's completed the large factory with MDF bits and the Pringles tubes. There's the 2 yellow towers and lots of corrugated card to make it look like corrugated metal and stuff. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that.
I've seen
that one. It looks really good.
Yeah. Then there's Kingsley Coppinger for the mining workers. Like you were discussing about the downtown dust up sort of
that's all
style thing. Yeah, so they're the guys carrying the 2 hammers, or a hammer each, really. Then I've got the Rob Plant, the Righteous Brothers of Crimson Carrion, which are Cawdor models with the animal skulls. They look all like they've got the bird beaks on their heads. They're Cawdors, and they've all got skulls on their heads. I'm not sure if you've seen them, if that makes sense. They essentially all look like they look like they're Raven Guard. They've all got like bird skulls.
Interesting. Look forward to seeing the pictures.
So they're that's Rob Plant if you search on the group, because I know you can just search straight in. Then there's Bob Hobbs, who's got the Aardvark Ambot. Do you remember seeing that? He's got a metal, it must be a metal miniature Aardvark model, and made that into an Ambot by sticking bits to it. It's pretty cool. It makes sense. It's like a tunneling animal that digs through soft ground, so it kind of fits that perfectly. I just thought it was really cool. And then there's the last one, which is Peter Alexander M, who made a Null Assassin for the horror scenario, which is essentially the my brain's got blank on the types of assassins that there are. The one with the big head that nulls psychic powers. Calidus? Yeah. And he's got, but it's Calidus assassin, isn't it?
No, the Calidus is the one that's the shapeshifter. It's the
it's Collectus then.
Colexus, that's the one. That's the anti-psycho one.
So I just thought it looked like a really dark down version of that with bare arms. It looked really cool with blood up it and stuff.
Side note, the Colexus head / mask would make a perfect basis for that Delaque pet.
Yes. I reckon it would look quite good as a spiker. As a spiker as well.
For irony's sake.
Yeah, it knows itself. They're all the things that I've seen as well today. This month, and I've got the top 10 contributors as well that I said I would say each month. So, Steve Uden's got called out again. So thank you, Steve. And then Martin Fishing. So thank you. James Marsden, Peter Alexander M, Mike Wayne, Gareth Cooley, Kingsley Coppinger, who's again someone we've called out today, John Kilwa, Tony Bellew, and Richard McManus. Thank you guys for contributing. It's really helpful, even if it's not pictures themselves. The actual comments and bits and pieces are really helpful. Give people feedback. Again, I've not really in our group. I've not really had to seen any negativity. Everything's generally been quite good. People have asked questions. People have given answers rather than opinions. It's still a really cool group. So keep it going, guys.
One thing I did find interesting, it was a couple of weeks ago now, I guess. It was someone posted on there was a new listener because they'd stumbled across the Facebook group just by, I guess, randomly searching Necromunda on Facebook. And then the penny dropped that there was a podcast accompanying it. And it was quite refreshing thinking, oh yeah, I suppose if we don't tell people.
Yeah, I think the thing is, a lot of people, when I've been accepting them recently, have been just where they're already attached to 3 other Necromunda groups. Facebook will give it as a suggestion, so people will then join. They'll get involved and then not read the top announcement that's pinned and not realise that there's a podcast attached.
I did notice for the first time the other day we had someone mention that they found the podcast via YouTube for the first time and then found the group.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we are getting a slow trickle of people from the YouTube channel as well now.
Yeah, I think I've accepted a couple of people from finding it via YouTube and then getting into it that way as well.
I hope with the YouTube, we're not going to start doing webcam videos, are we? Because I'm currently sitting here in my underpants and my dressing gown, and I'm sure the internet doesn't need to see that.
No, you're the silent but deadly. It's Tony that's flashing.
No one needs to see your Underhive.
Okay, on that note, I think it's time to stop the podcast. So we'll be back next month. I think we'll probably definitely have Psychers, but we'll have a think about what we're going to do next and see what lovely models are brought out next month. Okay, that's the end of the Chronicles from the Underhive. Speak to you soon.
See you later.
And watch out for the flashes. And that was the end of Chronicles from the Underhive, a Necromunda and Post Apocalyptic podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. All the things we talk about in this podcast can be found at the Chronicles from the Underhive Facebook group. We'll post up links to all of the websites we discussed and the current projects we're working on. Come and join us and post up your Necromunda projects. We hope to see you there, and may you never roll a double on your gambling den.